Sounds to me like everybody's ready. Sounds to me like everybody's itching to go. Sounds to me like everybody is ready to put a cap on Hinamizawa's longest day and this big ol' streaming project as a whole. So, let's claw the last bit of intestines we can out of this wonderful story that has been splayed open on the table in front of all of us. When we last left off yesterday, we had reunited with our boy Satoshi. It was a very touching scene. But now it's time for the rest to play out. Away we go. Takano didn't have enough stamina to walk around in the mountains. She was running out of breath, but even so, as she continued to scream at the mountain dogs on the radio, she wasn't using an intercom like the mountain dogs were. Instead, she was using the communication unit on the back of on the back of one of the dogs, so he could constantly had to listen to her yelling. I'm not sure that's a Nazi uniform. I'm not sure where you're getting that, because that's like not an SS uniform. Like, an SS uniform has a very distinct look, and I don't think that's it. She's just riding around on his back. Can somebody catch him up. Somebody catch this boy up on 8 games worth of content. How's it going, Byron? Hope you're doing well. Takano bit her lower lip and squeezed her left arm with her nails. Her arms had nail marks all over them. She was holding her grandfather's research scrapbook in her left hand. Even Takano didn't know why she was holding it. Maybe she grabbed it unconsciously because she wanted her grandfather to comfort her. The mountain dogs had already suffered devastating damage. They had to walk around in an area where they weren't familiar with, and they wasted their energy on the multitude of traps that had been set. Although they were as tough as can be, they were getting exhausted. He panicked. The same thing kept happening. His team members had been going down one at a time, starting from the left flank, and he was next. Did that mean the enemy was coming from his 9 o'clock? No, those demons didn't think normally. On this mountain, being aware of 360 degrees around yourself wasn't enough. Even being cautious of the ground below your feet and sky above your head wasn't enough. Where are they fucking coming from? Those bastards. Come here, come the fuck at me. Nightingale 13 held his taser in front of him as he looked around timidly. This taser could have been a powerful weapon, but it was far more effectively used indoors. On this mountain, it was almost worthless. Nightingale 13 heard a noise from behind the bush. He thought he saw something, and he fired his taser. The electrodes flew out into the bush. Did he just imagine it? He felt a tug on his taser. Another tug. The cord from the taser was stuck in the bush, and he couldn't rewind it. If it wasn't useless before, it certainly had become that way. Then he heard a noise behind him again, and this time he saw someone coming at him, but his weapon was useless. The newcomer growled at him. Oh no! Oh my god! Yes, this is the most intimidating picture one can imagine. That was all it took. Because he was so scared he didn't think. That was exactly what Satoko expected. Satoko, who was up in a tree, dropped a metal bucket on his head. We are back to the Scooby-Doo shenanigans, everybody. It landed perfectly. The bucket had some drawings on it. What were they? They were drawings of strange unknown creatures. They somehow resembled those strange creatures you see on educational TV programs. As Brenda jumped out from another bush, she hit the bucket with a stick! No, maybe it should have been described as a strike instead of a hit. The man flew backwards. Keiichi was ready for him. The stance he looked a bit like, that's it. He looked like a batter in a batter's box. He was on one foot. It was the legendary 1 foot swing created by that one world famous baseball player. Destructive force can't be measured from just one direction. It's a function of both speeds added together. Both Keiichi's strike and the speed of his opponent created a truly amazing destructive force. I don't think that's how bunting works. With an exhilarating and magnificent sound, the mountain dog flew into the air in the opposite direction. Then he rolled down the ground and stopped. There, Rika awaited him. It was almost as though they'd calculated he would end up there. Rika patted the bucket happily. This comforting moment for Nightingale 13 only lasted for a second. Mion shot her taser at his butt. Nightingale 13 jerked for a moment, then went limp. Keiichi and Rena jumped on him and tied his hands behind his back with wire. Hey John, how's it going? I can't believe these Scooby-Doo fucking shenanigans are going to win the day. Doing good. Good to hear. Good to hear. Hanyu and Satoko high-five. While Keiichi and Rena tied Nightingale 13 up, Rika tried to sense something in the air. Oh no, she's a radar now. Rika reported to Mion she was a bit like a radar. Mion didn't even care about the guy they had just knocked out. She was already trying to figure out their next move while looking at Satoko's map and using the info Rika gave her. Everyone eagerly awaited Mion's next order. Mion was a great leader. She had both leadership skills and tactical ability, but more than anything else, she was great at encouraging people's spirits. There were no cowardly soldiers under a brave general, and brave soldiers fight like a million men under Mion's command. Nobody could stop Mion and her club members. Both Mion and Okanogi's original estimates were too low. Now Okanogi was thinking something else. Before they started this siege, he likened one of them to a well-trained platoon, but that didn't fit anymore. They were on par with almost an elite armored division. Alright everybody, does everybody remember what a battalion is? What a company is? What a division is? It's gonna be on the test. Foot soldiers can't beat an armored division. What Okanogi had was just a company. Where was the air support, or a bombardment from a warship, or an artillery base? Okanogi needed someone to pump the mountain full of holes. If he didn't have that, he needed a submarine to fire a nuclear weapon. If he couldn't have that, he wanted to retreat. Okanogi no longer doubted it. The enemy commander was a genius. Under a mighty commander, all soldiers became heroes. He wanted to see the face of the commander, or at least he wanted to know their name. But then Okanogi remembered that the demons used to live in Hinamizawa. He also realized the commander had to be a demon. How fucking appropriate! God damn it, Ryukishi. You genius, you.
こちらひばり店。子供の笑い声が聞こえる。頼む、助けてくれ。ひばり店、退却しろ、退却しろ。退却ってどっちにだよ。大鳥ないんだ。敵の一人を発見、追跡している。応援を送ってくれ。
大鳥ない。どこにいるんだ。所在地がわからない。周辺の状況を送られた。
霧が出てる。寒い。ここは河原。
大鳥ない。地図上ありえない。落ち着いて状況を確認しろ。
そんな、河原の向こうが死んだ姉ちゃんが。
大鳥ない。大鳥ない。応答しろ。大鳥ない。沈黙。無理だ。奴らはこの山の鬼だ。俺は知ってる。これは鬼隠しなんだ。俺たちは全員この山で消されちまうんだ。
バカな口走るのはやめろ。各班長は採点庫で状況把握と指揮高揚に努めろ。敵は悪魔なんかじゃない。ただのクソガキだ。ビビるな。格の違いを見せてやれ。
聞こえる。誰のインカムから聞こえてるんだ。
Oh no, they're on the intercom now! Somebody quick, give it to me on and let her make penis jokes.
俺じゃない。俺じゃない。
クマだ。大鳥3だ。ここには野生のクマがいるのか。聞いていない。大鳥1、一度撤退し下記の武装の検討を。
バカ言うんじゃねえ。いくら矢口三家だって野生のクマがいるはずねえだろ。連中のハッタリだ。乗せられるな。
人の身に過ぎたるを知らぬ愚かなる人間たち。汚すことを許されぬ聖地を踏み荒らす罪を知るがいい。我に感謝せよ。聖地を汚した罪をあがなう機会を与えしことを感謝せよ。
誰かのインカムを奪ってやがるんだ。敵の指揮変態戦術に乗るな。
恐れを知ることかなわぬ哀れな人間ども。よかろう。汝らがその身でしか知ることができないというなら。
Who's up next? Who wants a bucket? Who wants the fucking bucket?
ウグイスワンだ。声が来ていない。バカな。どこへ行った。応答しろ。
哀れなウグイスが一羽踏み込むことを許されぬ地に迷い込む。そんなにも知りたいか。鬼の世を知りたいか。告げよ。人の世に別れよ。我が忠告に耳を重ぬ具を今より知れ。
She's so chuny right now, it's ridiculous. Oh my god. Oh my god! This is genius.
ウグイス、結構取れ。
またやられた。誰が沈黙した。それより本部、俺の左肩には誰かいるんだよな。俺は孤立してるんじゃないよな。
まだ聞きたいか。痛みを伴う声が。
Do you guys like ASMR?
なんだよ今の音。何がひしゃげたらあんな音になるんだよ。
俺、昔電車の飛び込みを見たことある。あん時と同じだ。全身がひしゃげる音だ。
やだ、そんな死に方ごめんだ。死にたくねえ。死にたくねえ。
These guys are literally G.I. Joe villains.
やめてくれ、山の神様。俺も好きでやってるわけじゃねえんだ。給料もらってやってるだけなんだ。
ウグイスワンより本部。 ダメだ。士気の高揚は困難。隊員の脱落と士気低下は深刻。これ以上の戦線維持は困難。損害が増えるだけだ。
だから落ち着け、ウグイスファン。他の隊員は野戦の素人ばかりじゃねえか。お前はあの地獄の卒業生だろうが、そのお前が混乱してどうするんだ。落ち着け、お前が範を示せ。
本部、ウグイスワンが応答しない。そんな、あの人がやられるなんてダメだ。やっぱり悪魔だ。
ダメだ、クソ。敵は心理戦までこなしやがるのか。ガキどものくせにプロの不正規戦部隊に指揮減退戦術まで仕掛けやがるというのか。
Unconventional and incompetent. Radios are usually helpful communication tools, but in this case, they backfired. The club members took an intercom from a mountain dog they knocked out and used it to corner the other members psychologically. It worked even more effectively because they were in enemy territory and were unfamiliar with the terrain. The best solution would be to make everyone stop using the intercom, but that would give the enemy more chances to attack them individually. Okanogi was growing fearful of the club members as he still hadn't grasped their true identities. However, Takano still hadn't recognized how serious the situation was. She kept yelling at the mountain dogs to get their act together. Okanogi could tell she was exactly the type of commander who only commanded to attack and let her men die. But Takano's reckless orders were working in a way. Although the club members were winning, their area of operations was getting smaller. The club members were trying to lure their enemies into one trap area after another. In other words, they were defeating the mountain dogs by allowing them to come into their territory. The mountain dogs were about to be annihilated, but the curtains were closing on the club members' theater too. Okanogi realized his enemies were trying to finish this battle in a hurry. If the mountain dogs fell back, everything they'd done would be for nothing. He didn't want to, but he had to follow the princess's order. Okanogi figured he was finally about to get his enemies. Hanyu and Keiichi continued to act over the commandeered radio. She sounded like a real god, you guys.
っていうかすごいね、羽生。あのドスは波の人間にはちょいと無理だよ。
だって神様なのですから。ニパー。
She's a voice actress.
それを言ったらケイイチもすごいのです。
God is in the radio.
鶏の首を絞めたみたいなすごい悲鳴を出してましたです。
He sounded like he was choking his chicken.
こんなのケイイチさんには朝飯前ですわよ。何しろ我が部の通り名は口先の魔術師でございますもの。
へへへ、相手が人で耳がついてる限り誰だろうと俺様のケイイチマジックで思いのままに操ってやるぜ。
You should become a voice actor. I bet you'd be famous.
私は高野よ。あんたたちの最上位の上司よ。聞きなさい。鬼もいないし神様もいないわ。もしいるなら戦いなさい。神などその座から引きずり下ろしてやるのよ。ひばりとウグイスは合流して戦力を立て直しなさい。大鳥は白鷺の残存と合流。敵は山頂付近栄林署の資材小屋あたりを本拠地にしている模様。交渉を取られてる。こちらの動きが筒抜けのはず。奇襲はあって当たり前よ。差し違えてでも倒しなさい。
サンサ、武装に戻る許可を。奴らを制圧するにはペーサーでは無理です。
許可できるわけないでしょう。私たちは今ここで引けば取り逃がすわよ。私たちはあいつらの首に両手をかけてる。あとは締めるだけなのよ。
At the same time, Okanogi received another call. Using that line meant his caller didn't want Takano to hear the conversation. Okanogi understood the meaning of that, so he walked away from Takano and answered quietly.
指揮者より大鳥は緊急事態です。診療所研究区画が襲撃を受けたようです。エントランス区画への侵入者警報を受信しましたがすぐに解除されました。 ご報示の手続きによらない解除です。状況の確認を求めていますが無線に応じません。現在研究区画の武装保安隊も含め全員が沈黙しています。
Okinogi understood everything. He had been fooled. He suspected a diversion, but he never even thought that the heavily armed security unit of the Mountain Dogs could be bested. If the enemies were soldiers in camouflage, he wouldn't have been fooled. He underestimated them because he thought they were kids, but now he really understood. He understood the reason why no adults had showed up in the battle on the mountain.
わかった。そいつは東京の各校に伝えたか。
まだです。連絡しますか。
連絡しろ。
Oh shit.
富武は奪還され脱出。村境で封鎖線を張らせてるが無理だろうな。武装保安隊を秒殺した連中だ。RPG 一機では難しいだろう。
封鎖線に応援を送りますか。
バカ、そんな余剰人員があったらお姫様が突撃させてるぜ。今手が空いてるのはむしろお前くらいだ。封鎖線に連絡。車両の強行突破に備えろと伝えろ。
了解。
了解。警戒を厳にする。各自聞け。診療所が襲撃され捕虜を奪われたとの連絡が入った。敵はおそらく車両にて強行突破を試みるものと思われる。
RPG を準備。他は一斉射撃で蜂の巣にしろ。射殺許可は出ているぞ。
One of the Mountain Dogs nodded and opened a narrow case in the trunk of the van. In that case was a powerful anti-tank weapon, designated RPG-7. This was a weapon that many said changed the history of modern warfare. After all, this terrifying weapon had a firing range over several hundred meters, and it was capable of burying most tanks in existence. The dawn of this weapon meant that we were now in an age where a lone-foot soldier possessed the firepower to destroy a tank. It was capable of reshaping the history of warfare. That was the RPG-7. Each of the other four members had an MP5, and the weapon used to destroy the tire on EDA's car. There was no question that the blockade team was well armed. They waited in the van until the enemy vehicle showed up. Once they saw a suspicious vehicle, they were planning to stop it by moving into the middle of the road. They intended to destroy the vehicle by firing all at once. They all watched very carefully for suspicious vehicles coming from Hinamizawa. This was the only road that connected Hinamizawa to Okinomiya. It would take more than half a day to get there if they used a different route. Their blockade was where the gravel road changed into a paved road. It's what people call the village border, and it was their last chance to stop anyone from leaving. Hinamizawa was at a higher elevation from that point, so the vehicle would be coming downhill. They would probably be expecting a barricade, as well as heavy resistance from the Mountain Dogs. If they wanted to pass this point, the only way they could would be by force. They could start a gunfight, but that would take too much time. Since they didn't want to waste any, they should avoid unnecessary conflict. Rumble. Someone's stomach growled, so nobody made fun of it. That was understandable. Since all the members were getting ready for a battle, nobody even wanted to laugh. They looked at the clock. It was almost noon. Of course, they'd be getting hungry. At that time, they heard a noise coming from the direction of Hinamizawa. Obviously, the car was going very fast. Here we go. The van moved to the middle of the road and stopped there. Some of them hid behind the van, and some hid in bushes to the side of the road. They pointed their guns at the suspicious vehicle coming towards them. The car must have been going very fast, but this was a straight road. No matter how fast it was going, it couldn't escape. That car happened to belong to Kasai. The shining black paint and the sound of the engine made it clear that it was a very nice car. Contra Hardcore Stage 1. The RPG-7 fires unguided rockets, therefore hitting a quickly moving target is extremely difficult. In this case, however, their target was straight ahead. If the car tried to swerve suddenly, it'd flip. if that was the case, it wasn't necessary to shoot directly at it. Besides, according to what Kasai said, its power can easily flip a car without a direct hit. Even if there was only one chance to fire, the Mountain Dogs were definitely in a disadvantageous position.
富武さん、不審なワゴンが路上を封鎖してます。伏せてください。注意して。向こうのワゴンの鼻先に当てるようにするんだ。分かってます。一度経験してますので、コツは分かってますよ。
The Mountain Dogs aimed at the vehicle. It was coming right for them.
まだ引き寄せろ。距離100未満まで引き寄せろ。
分かってる。即挙してろ。
The Mountain Dogs in the bushes laid in wait, ready to fire. The rocket on the tip glinted eerily, like it was waiting for its prey. The soldier put his finger on the trigger of the RPG-7.
赤坂さん、衝撃に備えてください。
距離100。撃て！
What happened? Didn't the RPG-7 fire? That was when the one measuring a distance next to the shooter noticed something. The shooter's shoulder had been hit and it was tumbling to the ground.
スナイパー。銃声はなかった。距離400以上だ。
What?
そんなのどうでもいい。撃てて！撃てて！
Only their regular guns could stop the car now. The other Mountain Dogs fired all at once, but immediately they realized something. The car had been hit by a hail of bullets at close range. Any normal car would have been on fire in short order, but there was nothing. This wasn't a normal car.
そりゃそうです。そのザッケ御用達の防弾リムジンですから。葛西 RPG を観測士が拾った。
Are you telling me Shion is a sniper? Or no, wait. Kasai is the one that fired? Okay. Shion and Kasai were far beyond that straight road. They were in the enemy's blind spot on the other side of the hill, on top of an abandoned car. Shion was on her knees, checking the Mountain Dog's movement with a pair of military-grade high-power binoculars. Kasai was lying on top of the car with a sniper rifle in his hands. Shion figured this would be where the Mountain Dogs would place their ambush, so the only way for them to beat the dogs was to snipe at them. Both Shion and Kasai took sniping lessons in the US during the dam conflict. Kasai was now aiming at the man who picked up the RPG and was trying to take position with it. Yeah, like she's literally being his spotter right now. It's great. They were both shot in the shoulder. The wounds wouldn't kill them, but they definitely couldn't fire that rocket. Yeah, like why not? Like it seems like a perfectly valid way to handle that situation. I don't get my way. I need to go get some sniping lessons. The car had arrived. The Mountain Dog screamed and drove out of its way. Akasaka must have been used to driving in this kind of situation. He hit the nose of the van just right and broke through the blockade. The van was hurled away and spun in a circle. As the Mountain Dogs tried to get back in the van, Shion and Kasai shot at them. A veteran spotter! The scope on a sniper rifle is one specifically made for sniping. Therefore, its field of vision is so narrow that the sniper is unable to see their surroundings well. This is why it's always necessary to pair up with a spotter. A spotter uses powerful binoculars to probe the situation and communicate information to the sniper. Snipers can't do their job alone. Their potential is unleashed only when paired up with a spotter equally as skilled. They tried to stand up and climb into the van, but the ultra-velocity of rifle bullets pinned them down. The bullets ripped through the air, traveling faster than the speed of sound. The noises bullets created was nothing like the sound of a normal gun. It almost sounded like the Grim Reaper himself swinging down his scythe. Furthermore, they could see the Mountain Dogs. They could see the Mountain Dogs, but the dogs couldn't see them. Only those who actually had experience being sniped at could understand this fear. There was a driver and one mountain dog in the van. They had to leave, otherwise it would be too late. The driver made a snap judgment and slammed on the gas pedal.
どうですか？来てる。運転がうまいね。あんなワゴン車なのに追い上げてくれる。それは参りました。応戦を頼みます。任せて。
Tomitake opened a window near one of the back seats and leaned out. Hot air blew into the car. Though the car was jolting up and down in the bumpy road, he checked the mechanism on his gun calmly. He did it naturally, as though examining his favorite camera. The gun had been taken from one of the security guards in the basement. One of the dogs in the van held the same gun in his hands. Their weapons were evenly matched. The road was no longer straight, it curved like a snake. There were some bumps and sharp curves which made things in the car fly all over. A gunfight in this situation would be extremely difficult. Tomitake realized he'd run empty in no time if he wasted bullets, so instead of firing recklessly, he carefully waited for the right distance. And in doing so, he tried to convince his enemy they were still out of range to make them close the gap. On the other hand, the mountain dogs couldn't take it any longer. He fired, wasting his bullets on the bumpy road. Some of those bullets hit the body of Kasai's car, making a nasty metallic noise. Yeah, I was about to say, that's not safe, my dude. The car's bulletproof, you ain't!
あんな下手くそじゃ当たらないよ。僕の生徒だったらゼロからやり直しだな。このような状況下では動きを読む。挙動を予測し、弾幕で予測射撃をする。当てようと思わない。弾幕に突っ込ませるようにする。こういう風にね。
Tomitake fired for the first time, after cautiously awaiting for the perfect moment. Those who understand guns would be fascinated with his shooting form. His stance was so firm he didn't lose control, even with a violent burst of shots. Yet there was no unnecessary tension, just enough slack. Despite being in such an anomalous position as leaning out of the car, Tomitake was shooting very precisely. It was nothing like what the mountain dogs did earlier. He shot at just the right time so his bullet went where it was supposed to go. It was hard to believe that they were using the same gun. Nasty metallic sounds etched themselves into the body of the van, which made the mountain dogs realize how good Tomitake was.
あいつめちゃくちゃ射撃がうまいぞ。ただの東京のジム屋じゃねえのかよ。俺、噂に聞いたことあるんだ。富武に事故でジム屋に移ったらしいんだ。教官時代は不正規戦部隊の射撃教官だったと聞いたぞ。なんだよそれ。ってことはあいつ。
Tomitake started to aim for the driver's seat to pressure them to give up. The mountain dogs could tell they were in a predicament. Tomitake was capable of hitting his targets easily, even on such a bad road. Furthermore, they were in a bulletproof limousine, while the mountain dogs were in a regular van. The van, which incidentally was facing the limousine in pursuit. All his shots would have been warning ones. Unless the mountain dogs called off the chase, Tomitake would start shooting at them soon enough. They had no chance of winning.
封鎖線が突破されたならそれ以上はもういい。深追いするな。富武は射撃の名手だ。死に急ぐな。
どうする？行かせていいの？了解。こちら追跡車両。追跡を断念。起動する。
諦めたようだね。
Yeah, Scooby-Doo the A-Team is about fucking right.
あれだけの銃撃戦をしたのに全く平静なままですね。相当の爆発をお受けします。訓練の賜物だ。
Tomitake, having slid back into the car, raised his fist in victory. He was easygoing as ever, even after a gunfight. Akasaka felt like he was finally getting to know Tomitake for the first time.
富武にご無事でしたか。連絡が取れず心配しておりました。
Tomitake was making a call from a telephone booth outside Okinomiya. The phone lines in there were in a different network than the one the Mountain Dogs had sabotaged. This is why he could make the call. Tomitake had called Tokyo immediately. He told Tokyo that there were some spies from the Mountain Dogs within Tokyo's research division, which is how they found out where he was. He also told them that he was captured, but that he had escaped. He told them that they were fooled by the diversion and that they were on the mountain as they spoke. While he was captured, Major Takano, the ringleader, had hinted at the existence of masterminds she was working for, etc. He explained everything that he had learned thus far.
入江機関の早急な鎮圧を。彼らはすでに地上での発砲を繰り返しており、このままでは村人に発覚するのも時間の問題です。番犬の緊急出動を強く要請します。
もしもし、調査部の岡だ。無事でよかった。番犬はすでに南沢地区の南方30キロで空中待機してる。
Oh shit.
こちらも上層部に鎮圧命令を求めていたのだが、石頭どもが事なかれ主義で渋りやがってな。だが君が無事ならば話が早い。君の話はすぐにトップに説明する。許可はすぐ出るだろう。20分以内に番犬は到着する。つい今、高野三佐と小野木兄に逮捕命令が出たぞ。入江機関の即時制圧と山犬への武装解除命令も出た。君のおかげだぞ。でかした。
Tomitake walked out of the telephone box.
話はつきましたか？
ええ、番犬部隊が鎮圧に緊急出動するそうです。すでに近くに空中待機していて、20分ほどで吸収するそうです。
Are you guys ready for the longest 20 minutes? Because that's what I'm guessing is going to happen.
どの程度に強いんですか？その番犬という連中は。
山犬が機密保持のための多目的部隊だとしたら、番犬は戦闘のみに特化した精鋭部隊です。装備も人材も比べ物になりません。
It's 9:30. It's been 10 minutes.
おそらくあっという間でしょうね。
Akasaka looked at his watch. It was 12:30. The bloodhounds would arrive in about 20 minutes. Akasaka remembered how hungry he was. It was lunchtime already. If he was brave enough, he would head to a noodle shop. By the time he was done, everything would have ended. For the Mountain Dogs, who fought well until the last possible moment, it was ending rather too soon. They were in an area where rice fields and a residential area mix. It was a border of Okinomiya. The sun was covered by a thin layer of silver clouds, and a cool breeze was blowing. It sounded like it might even rain a little. The two of them couldn't even remember how many times their lives were threatened that day. They wanted nothing more than to let the rain soak their bodies. After a while, Akasaka spoke.
どうしますか、富武さん。
どうするって何をね。
私、南沢へ戻ろうと思っています。まだみんな戦ってる。
He's got a point.
そうだね。でもいいのかい？一度はくぐり抜けた視線だよ。
リカちゃんが待ってる。まだ約束は果たし終えていません。
なら戻ろう。僕も用事があってね。ちょうど戻ろうと思ってたんだよ。赤坂さんはヘリの旅の経験はあるかい？乗せてもらえることになってるんだ。
They watched the breeze blowing over the rice fields for a while, then returned to their bullet-ridden car. The car started up quickly and they drove it back the way they came. It was only noon. There was still plenty of time before the Watanagashi festival began. Thank God the Watanagashi festival is still on the table, you guys. Clouds covered the sky and it suddenly grew cool. It was going to rain a bit, according to Okanogi's intuition. He already knew their enemy had broken through the blockade, but he hadn't told Takano about it. By then, it really didn't make any difference if she knew or not, and he also wanted to reach the top of the mountain. Okanogi was only thinking about one thing. He was thinking about the enemy's commander, who made the day so horrible for him. Nothing bad happens at Watanagashi. It's right! It's right! It's gonna be fine. He just couldn't accept his defeat until he saw the enemy's commander face to face. The battle was already lost. They just had a princess who didn't think they had yet. Oh boy. Boy, oh boy. Ain't that a relevant comment right now? With the rest of the mountain dogs falling to traps and ambushes, Okinoki had ordered all units except his own to fall back from the front line and into the vehicles. The only ones left to go on was the very determined princess, Okinogi himself, and a handful of exhausted members of the mountain dogs who could barely walk. Eventually, the slope became a little more gentle. Okinogi and his companions finally arrived at the storage stack of the Forest Service. The club members were already aware that the mountain dogs had been almost totally annihilated. Both the numbers and the strength of the dogs had fallen far below that of the club members. Therefore, when Okinogi saw his opponents lined up there to welcome them, he wasn't surprised. It was all the kids who had driven the mountain dogs to destruction that entire day. They had also fought with everything they had. Though they had overwhelmed us from start to finish, they had used up all their stamina and were on their last legs as well. Still, their willpower kept them standing, a will born of the victor's honor, which God granted only to the winners.
いたわ。あるよ、おころぎ、トライさせなさい。
サンサ、よくもこんなざまの我々をこき使えるもんです。
何？私に逆らう気なの？
まさか逆らう気なんか最初からありませんやね。
Okinogi removed his communication unit, his taser, and all the heavy equipment he had been carrying. Then he unbuttoned his shirt and told his men to stay put as he stepped forward. He strode forward about half the distance toward the club members.
山犬の大鳥ワンコとおこのぎだ。お前らのリーダーに敬意を表する。名前を聞かせてくれ。
The club members looked at each other. One of them was a girl taller than the others. She couldn't be that old, but her hawk-like eyes were as sharp as a veteran soldier's. Okinogi didn't know her circumstances, but only those whose lives were threatened on a daily basis had eyes like that.
部長、園崎美音。
The girl stepped forward.
いや、年齢なんてどうでもいい。朝からの沖宮署での騒ぎからこの山での戦いまで、すべてお前の指揮なのか。
The girl didn't answer, but her silence confirmed it more strongly than anything she could have
こ
said.
の戦はお前らの勝ちだ。まだ負けてねえと思ってるのはうちのお姫様だけさ。もう今さらどうにもならねえ。富武は封鎖線を突破。沖宮にすでに到着して。
Damn, he just like, yeah, it's over. You fucking win. I'm done.
鎮圧部隊がいつここにやってくるか知らねえが、それも時間の問題だ。笑いたきゃ笑え。爪ってやつさ。
おこのぎ、何をやってるの？
Uh-oh.
その女は敵のリーダーよ。倒しなさい。
I don't think she's happy about this.
お姫様が何か言ってるが気にするな。
Yeah, don't listen to the loudmouth back there.
望みは何？
お前も大将、俺も大将だ。わかるな。
あいつ降参したんじゃないのか？
レナにはわかる。あの人は今日敵の指揮をしていたんだよ。そして部下がみんなやられた。だから「はいそうですか」って言って負けを認めるわけにはいかないの。
我が身を犠牲にしてしか大軍の将は見そげないというのですか？
いいよ。あんたが納得するようにすればいい。
感謝するぜ。
Mion took a stance. Okinogi took a stance too. Although Okinogi was nothing like Akasaka, he was still a close combat specialist. Even when exhausted, there was no way Mion could defeat him. Takano thought so too. She thought Mion was underestimating Okanogi. But Mion knew. She knew that she was the only one who could put him at ease. Okanogi ready, launched sharp from his waist, and Mion deflected it to the side with her elbow, wrapped her arm around underneath it, wrenching it back behind him, and forced him up into a hold. And then she twisted his arm even further. Okanogi was certain she was going to snap a bone. It was an excellent technique. She took his arm in one flowing motion. It was clear that Mion's self-defense techniques weren't spur of the moment. However, she didn't break Okanogi's arm, but instead threw him onto the ground. She didn't deliver the final blow, but rather chose to look down on him. There you go. Now she's cute when she's mad. Okanogi got up quickly, took a stance once again, and then swung his arm down. But Mion avoided it effortlessly, and just like she did before, she grabbed his arm and turned it around. They were in the same position as before. And just like what happened then, she didn't break his arm, but threw him onto the ground and looked down on him. Does angry Okanogi have a sprite? Yeah, he does. Look how angry he is. He's got that whole pocket thing going. It's real good. I think Manga Gamer's Okanogi rendition is real dope. I've always liked it. I think it's pretty good. It is. You're not wrong. I like it though. He had a stronger drive this time. He tried to kick right through her from a step and a half away, yet this time Mion stepped in to launch her own attack, jumping right towards the foot, trying to kick her. Mion kept herself low as she entered close range with Okanogi, shutting out his leg, trying to kick her. So of course, he went after her head. Okanogi raised his right arm to elbow her in the skull, but this time Mion rose up, using both hands to keep his arm from swinging down. Unlike the flowing motions from earlier, this was simply a contest of strength. His physique was overwhelmingly superior to hers, so she couldn't win that test of strength. But suddenly Mion let go and allowed Okanogi's elbow to come down. Then she stepped to the side, and another repeat of before. Okanogi's arm was held behind his back, and he ended up in the same position. But what came after was different. Okanogi's face lowered as Mion lifted his arm up high, and she swiftly brought a knee into his face. It was exactly the technique that Okanogi told her about just earlier. And once again, he was down on the ground. Yeah, like, why Mion would just use her gun? Mion scoffed. Okanogi took it with a smile too. He wasn't trying to be humble, it was just his pure reaction. Yeah, other mountain dog. Hey!
私を飼いならせやしないよ。
そうだろうな。そうだろうよ。なら聞かせてくれ。お前ほどのやつなら何の隊長？
隊長なんて興味ないね。部長でいいね。
So I thought that Skylark 13 was going to play a bigger role because he has a sprite, and I know that that sprite is from something else, and I know that they kind of basically backported it to Higurashi, which is weird. I kind of thought he would be more of a big deal than he ended up being. Which one is Skylark 5? I don't know. But they're like... Yeah, it feels like they did it purely for the barrel. Yeah, that was a real good little scene. But that's basically a character from Umineko that gets introduced in Umineko. And I was like, I know that like they didn't have a sprite on the Manga Gamer. They didn't have a sprite for that character on the original, but they have what looked like, it looks like they just took an upgraded Umineko sprite and put it in there.
妥当だな。
ダメダメダメ、なってないね。あのね、私がやりたい部長はたった一つ。南沢文庫の若部の部長だけさ。罰ゲームのない戦いなんてごめんだね。口先の魔術師前原圭一、カーリーモードの竜宮レナ。
That's a good title for her. Real intimidating one to have on the battlefield. I am a seeker of all things adorable and cute.
トラップ使いの里子に萌え落としのリカちゃん。
Charming enticer.
そして期待の新人古出羽生。
And meet Hanyu, the newcomer.
これだけ揃ってなけりゃ世界のどこだろうと退屈だね。
勝てねえ。勝てねえよ。こんなやつが隊長だったんじゃ勝てるわけねえよね。
He's gone mad. He's done. He's just fuck it. I'm done.
しっかりなさい。
Takano yelled at him, but Okanogi didn't hear it.
これでウォーミングアップはいいだろう。次の一撃でぶち抜いてやるぜ。当たったら死ぬぞ。覚悟しな。
キナ、あんたに似合いの最後をくれてやるよ。あんたが欲しいと思ってる決定的な最後をくれて。
よく言ってくれた。よく言ってくれたぜ。
Okanogi took about 5 steps backwards and breathed deep. His body twisted as he gathered his spirit into his right fist. Just as he said the next attack would be for real, he was putting everything he had into just one final blow. Mion narrowed her eyes, preparing to parry the blow with her side. The sky began to stir. They both felt raindrops on their foreheads.
行くぜ。殺すからな。殺しに来いよ。
あんたのお祈りが
I see that pixel. That one tense moment was suddenly brought to an end. He dashed forward in a low position, just like a runner from a starting line. Then he added the twist from his body into the blow as his right arm roared with all of his power. A bolt of lightning punctuated that moment in time, burning a moment into our eyes. In that moment, Mion's stance hadn't changed at all. No, maybe she moved like lightning in that moment. It struck. We had to recall the moment burned into our eyes to review the scene. Okanogi had swung his right fist, which had enough power to shatter Mion's bones. So what if 100% of his power was directed back at him in a counterattack? When the lightning struck, Okanogi's body had been flying through the air. It was a legendary technique in Japanese martial arts, passed down in Judo and Aikido. The air throw. Oh my fucking Christ. It looks as if one is being thrown without his opponent even touching him. A miraculous technique that occurs at lightning speed. Of all the techniques Mion possessed, it was the most sublime, advanced technique she could administer on the defeated General Okanogi. The feeling of freedom while flying in the air is more memorable than the impact of hitting the ground. Supposedly. When Okanogi hit the ground behind Mion, a heavy rain suddenly began to fall. And just as it did, a massive helicopter appeared from the other side of the mountain. The helicopter's rotors stirred up in the air and blew away the raindrops like a tornado. The rotors sounded much like a tornado, too. Predictable! A rope uncoiled from the rear of the helicopter and soldiers came sliding down it, one after another. The onlookers were stunned for a moment before realizing what they were seeing. It was the Bloodhounds. The Bloodhounds that Tomitake had called in. Having realized how bad the situation had become, Okanogi returned to the other members of the Mountain Dogs. Nothing was going their way anymore. The Mountain Dogs ran down the slope and disappeared into the woods. They dragged Takano with them, who couldn't understand what was going on. A voice echoed from the speaker attached to another helicopter circling around the mountain.
本日1蓋302入江機関の全権限は凍結され上級司令部の直轄となった。また同時刻上級司令部は入江機関全職員の武装解除を命じた。山犬中隊全隊員は直ちに武装解除し入江診療所裏駐車場もしくは山頂資材置き場に集合せよ。これに応じない場合屋内法及び自衛隊法に基づき厳正に対処することをここに通告する。
Yeah, Takano's state of shock is a bit understandable, given that she literally just fell for every wacky Looney Tunes trick in the book. Bloodhound members continued to slide down the rope from the helicopter. Even at a glance, they were very different from the Mountain Dogs. They were armed more heavily, and the guns they had were much larger. Such things clearly differentiated the two units.
これで私たちの勝ちですの？わかりませんのです。僕も初めてのことなので勝ったのかわからないのです。
Satoko and Rika sat down and hugged each other. They were both soaked in rain, but they still sat down in the mud. Mion stood solemnly in the rain as the leader of the winning team. The Mountain Dogs had abandoned the field. They all ran away with their tails between their legs. Keiichi and Rena ran over to Mion.
Mion.
みーちゃん。
終わったね。
ああ、これで部活は終わりさ。
リカちゃんも無事。みんなも無事。みーちゃん、勝ち取れる最高の勝利を勝ち取ったんだよ。
ミオンがみんなを率いたんだ。ミオンのおかげの勝利さ。
But Mion didn't seem to be listening to Keiichi and Rena. Instead, she mumbled to herself.
私さ、部活の罰ゲームって好きなんだよね。
It's a good, yeah, I like punishments too. They're very good.
部活ってさ、残酷だよね。仲間で戦い合ってさ、ビリを決める。つまりそれは、その子がビリだってみんなが見下すことなんだよね。
見下してなんかいねえだろ。楽しく罰ゲームをしてそれでおしまいさ。
そう、罰ゲームで楽しく遊んでそれで終わり。敗戦の将の責任をさ、楽しくみんなで笑ってそれでチャラにできるから好きなんだよね。負けた本人も含めてみんなで笑って。
誰も傷つかない。 みんなで楽しく笑っておしまいにできる。
あのおこのぎってやつは私に投げ飛ばされて叩きのめされなきゃ自分の罪がさ。そりゃさ、今日何度もヤバい目にあったよ。殺されそうに何度もなったよ。でもさ、もう終わりでしょ。ゲームセットなんだよ。なのに彼らには チャラにする罰ゲームがないんだね。
Mion might have realized something when she threw Okanogi. Keiichi didn't think anybody else could understand that.
ミオンが何を言ってるのかもう忘れろ。あいつらはもう終わりさ。
そうだね。これでもうすべて。
みんな生きてる。誰も怪我してない。今は最高のハッピーエンドを喜ぼうよ。
そうだな。誰もやられなかった。最高のハッピーエンドじゃねえか。
While they hadn't yet confirmed Shiana Kasai's safety, they were correct. This was the happy ending that they had all been fighting for. However, Mion was still thinking. She only understood the reason for that in the moment the thunder struck. But as soon as the flash of lightning had disappeared, her understanding vanished as well. All she could remember was that she noticed something very important and that shortly after, she completely forgot about it. She could only feel a great sense of loss. The Bloodhounds soon surrounded the club members. At first, they thought the club members were their enemies, but when Tomitake appeared, he explained the whole situation. The commander of the Bloodhounds appeared to beg the club members not to say a word about anything, as it was a politically sensitive incident. It was amusing to see a man like that beg while carrying all these weapons. Of course, they had no intention of talking to anyone about it. Once it had ended, it felt like a bad dream. If, on the following day, someone asked them what they had been doing, they might not even remember it. This day was that unrealistic for them, so even if they were asked, they wouldn't say a word.
リカちゃん、無事でよかった。
赤坂、無事でよかったのです。
こっちも大成功だったよ。そっちもみんな無事かい？入江診療所はすでに彼らが制圧したそうだよ。山犬の隊員たちも続々と投降に応じてる。隠れていた入江先生ともう一人の少年も彼らに保護されたそうだよ。
Keep it down, keep it down, keep it down.
監督も無事ですのね。よかったですわ。少年？
Oh no.
はて、どなたでございましょうね。富田さんか岡村さんあたりが巻き込まれて怪我でもしたのかしら。さとこ、本当によかったのです。
Rika's smile made it clear on what she had gone through. Someone could only smile like that after a long and exhausting struggle. Satoko had no idea what that smile meant. How much time would be needed to make her understand? Still, Irie will do something about it. For certain, he will bring Satoko's Nini back home.
そうだ、さとこ。今日のお注射をしていないのではないですか？お注射をしないとダメなのです。あ、そうでしたわね。こんな時にも注射をやめちゃいけないなんて面倒な話ですこと。
Satoko seemed to have no idea what her medication was connected to the syndrome. Perhaps she was already aware, but pretended not to be. Rika vowed to herself that no matter how long it took, she was going to witness with her own eyes the moment her best friend finally parted with her tragic past.
このお注射も日に2回で助かりますわよね。以前の3回の時は本当に大変でしたわ。
Satoko also had no idea that Satoshi was involved in the development of her medication. Irie had said that Satoshi, as a specimen, had contributed much to Satoko's treatment. Even while asleep, Satoshi longed to ease the burden on Satoko. And those feelings must have influenced Satoko's medicine somehow. Satoko had to inject herself in the stomach. For privacy, she ran into the grove of trees and gave herself a shot. There was no danger in her doing so. One after another, the bloodhounds dropped down from the helicopters. Each helicopter must have carried at least 20 or 30 soldiers. There was one helicopter at the top of the mountain and two more halfway down the slope. Troops were pouring down from all of them, leading to the impression that the entire mountain was under the bloodhounds' control. Nobody fired their weapons even once. The mountain dogs had no choice but to surrender. It wasn't raining hard at all. The sky would clear up in about 20 or 30 minutes. It was the volatile weather typical of early summer. Satoko soon returned and spoke to her best friend.
リカ、羽生さんの姿が見えませんわね。そう きまで一緒にいましたのに。羽生どこ？
I'll be right back in a second. It was stupid of me to think that Tokyo had sent more supports. They're acting as if they've known of their loss for a while now. I was the only one who didn't know.
どういうことなの？状況がさっぱりわからないわよ、おころぎ。
手詰まりってやつです。富武が呼んだ番犬が到着したんですよ。
番犬？名前は聞いたことあるけど、でも山犬と似たようなものでしょ。どうして応戦しないのよ。
ご冗談は。山犬は所詮傍聴部隊です。対して番犬は本間門の戦闘部隊ですが、花から勝ち目なんざありませんね。
The remaining 3 members looked at me in exhaustion.
大体どうして番犬が来るのよ。富武は捕まえてるのにどうして？他にスパイがいるんじゃないの？それは誰よ。
さんさ、すでに診療所が襲撃され、富武2位が奪い返されたことはご存知ないのですか？
One of the 3 spoke up timidly, but Okanogi signaled him to shut up.
そんなの聞いてないわよ。それはいつよ。どうなってるの、おころぎ。それに村から逃げられないよう封鎖部隊というのもいるんでしょ。
They aren't even responding to me anymore. I've been left behind. I'm the only one who didn't know. I'm being left out. The members looked at Okanogi, waiting for his command. Nobody is waiting for my order. Nobody even cares about my orders.
隊長、指揮者より無線です。
One of the members handed the intercom to Okanogi.
隊長、各校より最終連絡です。各校を実行せよ。
各校了解した。
指揮者を番犬が包囲中です。投降を勧告しています。いかがしますか？
指揮者、いや太田、足立、ご苦労だったな。投降を許可する。武装解除して以後は番犬の指示に従え。
指揮者了解。
各員その場で聞け。指揮者が制圧された。すでに診療所も制圧されているだろう。我々は全てのバックアップと装備を失った。全班は壊滅。個々の隊員たちも武装解除に応じているだろう。山犬の完全敗北だ。
まだよ。なんとか東京の野村さんに連絡を取るのよ。番犬が何よ。番犬に匹敵する部隊を送り込んでくれるわ。R は生きていたのよ。終末作戦の実行は可能だわ。それをすぐに野村さんに連絡しないと。そのためにはまず東京への連絡手段を取り返すことが重要よ。こうなると村の連絡網を遮断したのが裏目に出るわね。指揮者を奪還するしかないわ。指揮者の無線で東京に連絡して応援を呼ぶのよ。幸い指揮者は今あっさり降伏してみせたから奴らも油断してるはず。おころぎと3人も隊員がいれば十分可能よ。 まだ6月19日。作戦開始は21日22日だったかしら。まだ間に合う。まだまだ間に合う。ここから巻き返すわよ、小野木。すぐに指揮者の奪還を実行しなさい。なんで誰も私の言うことを聞けないの。私は3歳よ。小野木よりずっと偉いのよ。小野木の言うことは聞けて、どうして私の言うことが聞けないの。
サンサ、さっきから飛び回ってるヘリが言う通りですわ。このゲームはうちらの負けです。これ以上の往生際の悪さは互いに得になりませんね。
何を言うの、小野木。まだよ。もうくじけるの。あなたも R が生きているのを見たでしょ。今日の一日がおかしくなったのは R が死んだなんて噂が流れたからよ。でも R は生きていた。今日の一日はなかったことになるのよ。緊急マニュアルはまだ生きているわ。
We get a do-over!
女王感染者が生きている以上、改めて殺せばそこから48時間の緊急マニュアル執行可能な時間が。
サンサ、緊急マニュアルがどうこうって次元じゃもうないんですよ。もう東京は女王感染者とか、それが死んだら48時間とか、もう終末作戦は完全に失敗しました。我々のクライアントはすでに証拠の隠滅に走り回っているでしょう。我々の役目ももうおしまいですわ。山犬なんて面白い舞台を10年ほど指揮させてもらいました。貴重な経験ができましたわ。それも今日でおしまいです。そしてサンサ、あんたの役割ももうおしまいです。
何をすんねん。私の役割。何のことよ。
サンサ、あんたの役目はその手に持っておられるスクラップ帳を育て上げることでした。
何の話よ。
I didn't expect Okunogi to start talking about my grandfather's
ひ
scrapbook.
なみ沢症候群って病気があることは疑いません。だが女王が死ぬと48時間で村中が大パニックになるってのは見た者がいません。本当か嘘かなんて分かりゃしないんですよ。
バカなこと言わないで。ほら書いてあるわよ。どこのページかしら。他の類似の脳内寄生虫症の症例から類推して統計的にどこよ。こんな時に限って。
I flipped through the pages of the scrapbook in a panic. I can't even remember which page I'm looking for. Okunogi slapped the scrapbook aside and it thudded. No, it landed in a muddy puddle, so it splashed onto the ground. The open pages of the scrapbook were face down in the muddy water and already turning color as they soaked up the mud. Oh no! As I crouched down to pick up the scrapbook, Okunogi stepped on it. The splash of the muddy water hit me in the face. I had to witness my precious scrapbook being stepped on and covered in filth.
このスクラップが書いてあることが本当だろうとでっち上げだろうと真実だろうと虚偽だろうと、実は誰も気にしてませんのですわ。
それはどういう意味よ。
I tried to get the scrapbook from under Okunogi's foot, but I couldn't pull it out.
東京のクライアントが期待してたのは、そのスクラップ帳の中身をどれだけの人間が信じてくれるかってことなんです。本当か嘘かはどうでもいい。ただ信憑性さえありゃよかったんです。
本当か嘘かどうでもいい。
そうです、どっちでもいいんです。でっかい研究所で偉い先生方が研究して、これこれこういう結果ですっていう 専門用語だらけの難しい資料を作ってくれて、中身などろくにわからねえ連中を騙せるだけの信憑性ってやつを。
嘘なんかじゃないわ。私と祖父が何年にもわたって研究してきて。足をどけなさいよ。
The scrapbook is getting soaked through. I'm trying my best so that it's not ruined, but it's of no use.
女王が死んだら村は皆殺し。そういうとんでもない話をお偉方に納得させられりゃよかったんです。ひなみ沢症候群が脳みそに寄生してどうこうとか、んなことは誰も興味ない。政治的アクションに使えるかどうかにしか興味がなかった。んなことはあんただって十分承知していたでしょうが。そして今や誰もこんなインチキスクラップは信じやしません。このスクラップ帳に大勢がかけた。そして負けたんですわ。山犬もこのスクラップ帳に熱く張って負けた。それだけのことですね。
インチキスクラップなんかじゃない。これは真実なのよ。全部真実。おじいちゃんが調べて、私が調べて、そして書き上げてきた真実の研究結果なのよ。だってみんな信じてくれた。だからあんな立派な研究所を作ってくれたのよ。信じてくれたからみんなそう野村さんだって。だからこそ私に声をかけてくれたのよ。この研究の進化を分かってくれるクライアントはきっと他にだっているわ。だってこの研究は人類の未来の可能性。
Okanogi got fed up and kicked me. I don't weigh much, so I fell backwards and became soaked in the muddy water. Okanogi walked over and looked down at me.
幸いなことに東京のクライアントも、そしてうちらもサンサにまだ期待している役割があるんですわ。おい。
One of the mountain dogs handed a gun to Okanogi. Okanogi checked the cylinder and then threw it over to me.
何よこれ。
サンサ、そいつで自分の頭ぶち抜いてくれませんか。
I looked at the gun. I'm used to seeing guns, working with the EDA Institute as I do. I was never frightened of guns before, but for the first time I feel scared just looking at one.
よくあるやつですわ。トカゲの尻尾ってやつです。サンサ、敗軍の将の責任ってやつで、そいつで自分の頭ぶち抜いてください。
そんな。
Nobody has ever told me to die before. Nobody has ever told me to kill myself.
クライアントもうちらもサンサが死んでくれりゃ、サンサがあることないことやってくれたってことでうまーく丸く終わらせられるんです。すでに東京はその準備に入ってますね。
他のこと言わないで。そんなこと。できるわけ。
I'm starting to sob. My body is shaking all over.
無理ならいいんです。今のあんたにそこまで求めるのは酷でしょう。
Okanogi pulled his gun out and pointed it at me. The other members, having realized everything will work out if I die, just looked at me coldly.
投降を説得する。堅くなに拒否し抵抗。銃撃戦になりやむなく射殺。そっちが本当の筋が。自殺用の銃は短くない時間世話になったことへの俺なりの気遣いだったつもりです。
そんな筋書き嫌よ。嫌よ嫌。そんなの誰が考えたのよ。
あんたがさっきから助けを求めたいって言っておられる東京の野村さんです。 終末作戦が失敗した時に備えダメージコントロールを図る作戦ってのもちゃんと合わせて用意してあったんです。野村さんの暗号名はカッコウ、そしてサンサの暗号名はヒナでしたね。
Yeah, Jetstorm said that during the last spoiler cast we did. That was one of his calls.
カッコウの卵はよその鳥の巣に産みつけられ、そこから帰ったカッコウはですね、元々の巣のヒナを突き落として。
Yeah, when he said that in the moment, I had to bite my tongue because it was just like, oh, are you fucking for real?
巣から落ちた飛べないヒナは地面でのたくり。まあ普通は野犬や山犬に食われて殺されちまうってことですわ。
I used the money I got from Uncle Koizumi to pay the mountain dogs, thinking I had gained a reliable ally. I always thought that, although Okanogi was barbaric, he was very reliable. But my nest had been taken over.
あんたの味方なんていなかったんです。あんたは東京のクライアントが描いた絵の通り踊って緊急マニュアルってやつを煽ってくれる。
Yeah, the name stuff is so good.
ですが。
Like, it was there the whole fucking time.
あんたにステージから退場してもらおうってことになったってことですわ。Man. それ。あんたの大好きなスクラップ長。そいつを左手に抱きながら、右手で銃を拾ってください。
The scrapbook was finally returned to me, covered in mud. I held it with both hands and cried. What a joke the entire life of Mio Takano was. Right now is when I should go back inside that chain link fence. My shaking hands held the ice-cold gun.
弾は一発ですから慎重に。頭蓋骨は案外。弾を滑らすって話ですわ。口を開けてその中に撃つのがよくあるやり方です。ほら、銃を持って構えて、そして死んでくださいな。
In the hills of the mountain, a single gunshot echoed. With that gunshot, members of the Bloodhounds rushed in. Okanogi and the other men raised their hands in surrender.
高野三佐も一緒でしたが、どうしても投降は嫌だと渋りましてね。今の発砲は三佐がこっちに銃を向けたんで撃った威嚇射撃です。
レトリバー7よりリーダー小此木2と山犬隊員3名を逮捕。高野三佐はこのすぐ近くを逃走中の模様。足跡が南西方向へ消えているが物資が来い。それ以上の追跡は不能。大至急応援を。高野三佐は武装している。繰り返す。高野三佐は武装している。
レトリバーリーダーよりオール。重要手配犯の高野三佐が現在逃走中。高野三佐は武装している模様。注意されたし。逃走地点を中心にパトローリングで封殺せよ。
I'm running through the mountain covered in dirt and still holding the muddy scrapbook. I'm falling because of the mud, and branches and roots continue to torment me. I lost one of my shoes, so I decided to get rid of the other shoe too. This isn't the first time I've had to run like this. This isn't the first time I've ran barefoot. This isn't the first time I've felt such pain in the soles of my feet. This isn't the first time I've cried like this.
繰り返す。高野さんさ、武装解除し投降す。逃げ場はない。山犬はすでに全員投降した。君に味方はいないぞ。
The helicopter above my head is calling out my name. I crawled into a hollow tree and held my knees and hid. The last time I ran barefoot like this was a very long time ago. My feet are bloody and swollen and I can no longer walk. I can only cry as I bite the corner of my scrapbook. Sadness and humiliation fight for dominance in my heart. When I feel sad, I cry. When I feel humiliated, I scratch myself to calm my anger. And I still have the gun in my right hand, the one with the single bullet in it. I have to kill myself. My death is the only thing that can bring it all to an end. Killing myself is the only way to go back to that day. But when I look at the scrapbook in my left hand, I'm assaulted by my sadness and fear.
死にたくない。死にたくないよ。
Just die. Atone for your actions with your death. I recalled the look in Okanogi's eyes. I know I have committed sins. There are so many sins, too many of them. There are more sins than I can possibly atone for. But do I have to die for them? I cried again, and then I noticed someone standing nearby. It's the girl whom I met when I came to Hinamizawa when the EDA Institute was first opened. I met this girl at the shrine when I declared war on God. This girl is the god of this place. The god looked at me and sneered rather than sympathizing.
それでもまだ人の身を捨て神の座を求めるというのか。人の子よ。ずいぶん久しぶりね。負けよ。このゲームは私の負けよ。人の身の分際で神に挑戦した哀れな女の末路が。
Yeah, see, like, my assumption is, I think she alluded to it, that, yeah, like, even when the plan goes through, she's dead. Because that's how this works. Like, but it's all to prove, you know, her grandfather's research. Because, yeah, she said that earlier in this chapter, that when the plan succeeds, she's gonna die. Like, Tokyo will probably just wipe her out. So, it's something that's expected to have happened.
人の子よ、まだ神の座を追い求めるのか。数々の試練をまだくぐり、それでもなお神の座を求めるのか。冗談じゃないわ。神の座なんてもう無理じゃない。人の子よ、聞け。今こそ神になる道を示そう。そなたの右手に持つ鉄の火、己が生に別れを告げる。神の座、肉の器は不要。人にその姿を認められようなどと思ってはならぬ。神の子、孤独な存在。それに好んでなりたがる愚かな人の子。それでもなお神の座を目指すというの。これで私の頭を打ち抜けって。そんな簡単なことで私は神になれるの？そんなにも簡単なことだったの？なら私は何？今まで
で何を積み上げてきた。
大勢の人間の罪を背負った。その大勢の罪を今こそ己を生贄に捧げることでその勇気はたたえられ、神の座の末席を許すであろう。
何をそれ、私にトカゲの尻尾を引き受けて全員の責任を押し付けられて死ねと、そういうの。ふざけない。
Wow! Wowie! Wow! Wow!
そんなの嫌よ。絶対に嫌。
何故に嫌か。常に人の世で和を求めるためには、一つの汚れに一つの生贄がいる。それが人の世の断り、罪のみそぎの方法ではなかったのか。そなたの望む未来に一人の少女を生贄に求めたのは、それを理解していたからではなかったのか。
わかんない話はやめて。私には何のことかさっぱりわからないわ。
それがわからぬから、所詮は人のも神の座を求めた身の程知らずを食いよ。
食いる。
It's something that runs deep in a lot of Ryukishi's works. Like, even Kikonia has a lot of God stuff in it. Like, religion has a big part in his works that I only really started noticing when I started reading the visual novels. It's something that really seems to... It's either something that he has a belief in or something that he likes writing about a lot, because it really permeates in all of his works like this.
他の人の責任をかぶって死ぬのが神になる道なんて絶対嫌。そんな神様になりたくない。私は人間でよかった。ただ人間として生きていいよ。誰かに許してもらいたかった。
That's hard.
生きてもいいよってそれなのに。
ならばこの度の人の世の汚れをいかにして代価を払うの。
なんでよ。なんで誰かが責任を取らされなくちゃならないのよ。誰もが相手を利用して情感を押し付け合って、自分の手を汚さずに済むように立ち回り。それが人の世なの。違う。だってお父さんやお母さんやおじいちゃんと生きてきた日々にはそんなのなかったもん。みんながみんな誰にもジョーカーなんか押し付けなかった。どうしてその世界から私はこぼれてしまったの。どうして私はこんな雨の山中を泥まみれになりながら一人でさまよってるの。私はどうしてこれが私の罪に対する報いなの。分かってた。うっすらと気づいてた。何か大切なものを間違えて、でもそれを認めたくなくて、取り返しがつかないところにまで来て初めて後悔した。報いなのね。
人の世はそなたに罪のみそぎを求めるなら、この度の汚れはそなたを生贄に捧げることで払われよう。それが人の世の払い方なれど、我は人にあらず人を超える存在にして 欠けたる輪を埋める存在、人の罪を許す存在、人の罪は人には許せぬ。我こそが人の子の罪を許そう。
I forgive you. Demanding a sacrifice to be paid for sins isn't the way of the human world, it's the way of demons. So this is not the world of man. This is a world of demons created by man and demons infesting them. Humans cannot end that way of their world. So I became a god to grant that end. It was over 1,000 years of pain. I wanted to come down from this place. I desired a world where God doesn't need to make peace. And finally, after 1,000 years' time, I have found that fragment. Come, child of man, I will forgive your sins in my name. Kneel and repent. Ask for forgiveness, then you shall receive it. God will forgive you. God will forgive your human sins. The god in the form of a little girl walked up to me and reached out. As I knelt and looked down, she touched my head. I heard voices in the distance. And then I saw a girl standing in front of me. She's one of Mion's club members, my most hated enemies. Shit, she's found me. The rain had already ceased. I decided to come out of the hollow tree. After the rain, it had grown so humid I was starting to sweat all over. I'm soaked with sweat, mud, and rain. I feel filthy. There we go. That's the combination of sounds. I've been bitten by mosquitoes and my body is itching all over. This is why I hate the mountains. I pointed the gun at her. The girl just looked at me calmly as if she didn't see it. At the very least, she didn't follow my order. What should I do? Should I take her as my hostage? I only have one bullet. How long can I keep running for?
Hanyu! どこだよ! 参ったな。マジで迷子だぞあいつ。あ、
見つけましたわ。羽生さん。羽生、一体今までどこへ。
本当に最後の最後までついてないわね。いや、あるいはついてるのかしら。最後の最後で一矢報いることはできそうね。みんな、
Oh dear!
これが何かわかるわね。
You know what that is? It's an evoker, right? Oh my. The situation has turned, a little sour.
銃よ。身動きしちゃダメよ。これで状況は逆転ね。
くそ、なんてこと。
ミオンちゃん、他の誰かを撃たれたくなかったら一歩前に出なさい。
I mean, just because, like, there are a lot of Japanese works that use German language. Like, I don't think Takano's uniform is a Nazi uniform.
ダメだよ、みーちゃん。
Like, there's no pattern of SS on her uniform at all. Mion stepped forward quietly. She certainly has a lot of courage. No wonder she's their
あなた
leader.
のおかげで私はもうめちゃくちゃよ。私を殺そうとこの山中に怖いお兄さんたちが歩き回ってるわ。どうせ私は許されない。でもこのままではあまりに悔しいわ。だからね、せめてお返しをしてやりたいの。
偉そうに言ってるけど、 その銃に弾が一発しかないのは知ってるぜ。
その通りよ。でもその一発でミオンちゃんが死んでしまうかもしれないとは考えない？
高野、ミオを撃つ気ですか？
誰も動いちゃダメよ。焦って撃ったら誰に当たるかわかんないんだから。
みんな動いちゃダメだよ。私の後ろに隠れてて。
勇敢ね。誰かを撃たれるくらいなら自分が撃たれようという自己犠牲？
まあね、拳銃の一発でそうそう人間くたばるもんじゃない。当たりどころにもよるだろうけどさ。
驚くわ。なんて勇気なの。みんなに代わって私に撃たせようってこと。言っておくけど、銃声がすれば怖いお兄さんたちが殺到するだろうから。
じゃあ撃てばいいよ。ただしその一発を撃った後、私の仲間はあんたを八つ咲きにするよ。
望むところよ。人を呪わばなんとやら。おこのぎを屈服させるほどの名将と相打ちならそれも悪くないわね。
撃ちなよ。その代わり絶対私に当てな。私以外の仲間に当ててみろ。あんたを死ぬより辛い目に遭わせてやる。
She's got a real good basement. She could do that.
怖
ダメだよみーちゃん。高野さんは本気。この人本当に撃つよ。なんとか時間を稼ぐんですのよ。そうすれば番犬の誰かがきっと。
もちろん。だから一矢報いる機会がなくならないうちにさっくり一発撃たせてもらうわ。さーて、どこに当たるかしらね。下手くそだからどこに当たっても許してね。
みー、本気ですか？
みんな動くんじゃないよ。私は部長さ。みんなを背中に守れるならこんなに嬉しいことはないね。もし当たりどころが悪かった時はさ、部活ロッカーの中に神棚を作って私を軍神と称えてよ。次期部長はケイちゃんね。みんなそん時は後をよろしく。
Leon is prepared to die. I'm already cornered. I won't accept any words of negotiation. Leon understands that. She doesn't want anyone else to be killed. That was why she chose to be a shield for her friends. This was an easy decision to make for her, because none of her friends would end up hurt. If she ends up just getting injured, that would be a stroke of luck as far as she's concerned. Even if she doesn't make it, she thinks that's far better than seeing any of her friends die, and that's why Takano will shoot. Even though she understands Mion's noble intentions painfully well, it's too visceral for her to accept, so she'll shoot. I will pull the trigger. With all the absurdities of the human world riding on that bullet, I will shoot
あなた
her.
たちよくゲームはするわよね。トランプのババ抜きはやる？
やらないね。うちはジジ抜きばっかだよ。
同じようなルールよ。人の世の罪はババ抜きと同じ。誰もが一枚のババを互いに押し付け合う。それは勝者を求めるゲームではなく、一人の敗者と生贄を決めるゲーム。私はそのババを引いた。そのカードをもう渡す相手がいない。だからその腹いせにあなたを撃つの。不条理な人の世らしくね。
I'm preparing myself to shoot. There's no hesitation left in me. I will shoot her. I'm serious. Mion closed her eyes and opened her arms to try and shield her friends as much as she could. And that was when Hanyu stepped forward and placed herself in front of Mion.
Hanyu? 危ないから下がって。勇敢なるミオ。あなたの勇気はそれで十分です。人の世のババ抜きが必ず人に押し付けられなければならないものならば、それを引き受けるのが私の役目。羽生、あんた何を？私も部活メンバーに加われてよかった。この世界はすごく楽しかったです。私も部活メンバーに加われてよかった。見ているだけじゃなく、加わる部活は本当に楽しかった。ありがとう。もう十分に楽しんだ。神の身には過ぎたくらいに幸せだった。
In that moment, Hanyu glared at me adamantly.
さあ撃て！人の子よ！人の世の押し付けずには済まぬ罪を放て！それを受け止めてやる。
分かったわ。分かったなら死ね！
The club members must have thought I was joking or bluffing. They didn't think that I would actually shoot. There was a noise like something exploding. In a world where time became as sticky as syrup, we saw it happen. The silver bullet hitting an invisible wall in front of Hanyu, as though the wall was protecting her. The bullet wanted to pierce Hanyu's chest, but it couldn't reach its goal. A bead of sweat formed on Hanyu's forehead. She had stopped the bullet with an invisible force.
大丈夫です。人の身でもこれくらいのことはできますです。
The silver bullet was being pushed back. Takano was startled by this otherworldly phenomenon, and then she spoke one phrase.
この化け物が!
The silver bullet smashed through the invisible wall. There was no longer a wall at all. There was no wall to protect Hanyu from the bullet. The bullet approached Hanyu's chest. Somebody let out a silent scream. Nobody could stop it. Nobody could stop that bullet. In that world of frozen time, nobody could stop the bullet that was stopped just inches in front of Hanyu's chest. Hanyu's friends had seen this scene before. The moment of checkmate. No matter how much they screamed, there was no way to avoid this tragedy. They knew that from their memories.
あなたは死ぬ。絶対死ぬ。好きなだけ走馬灯をご覧なさい。それが終わったら胸板をぶち抜かれて血をばらまいて、自分の血で溺れてのたうち回って死になさい。
その覚悟がなかったら僕はミオンの前になんか出ないのです。
Hanyu thought that this would take care of everything. Hanyu wasn't supposed to exist in the first place. She would leave the stage, and the rest of the cast would stay unharmed. This is how it's supposed to be. But in that moment, something happened to surprise even Hanyu. In the world of frozen time in which nobody can move, Rika reached out and put her hand on the bullet so that it was stopped in midair. How could she move? Even Hanyu couldn't move. Why could a mere human like Rika grab that bullet?
それを驚くのはおかしいわ。あんたと学んできたんじゃない。奇跡の起こし方。今日何度もすごいことが起こったけれど、本当の奇跡なんて何一つ起こしちゃいないわ。すべて死んじゃえば起こって当然のことだった。だからこの最後の瞬間に本当の奇跡を使うの。 私お社様の生まれ変わりだしね。最後にこの程度の奇跡は使わせて。
Rika rubbed the frozen bullet gently, very gently, then held it and embraced it lovingly, her hands at her chest. In that world where not even Hanyu could
高野
move.
も羽生も人の話を聞かないやつだってことも分かったわ。ミオンの話を聞いてた？私たちはババ抜きなんてやらないわ。ジジ抜きしかやらない。それを高野は同じようなゲームだと笑ったけど、全然違うゲームなのよ。
An old made a single joker, an unharmonized element is added. To a full harmonized set of cards and people try to foist it onto one another. But in Old Bachelor, one card is removed from that harmonized world, and everyone foists the unharmonized fragments on each other. It's different than having a joker, because everything would be in harmony if there wasn't something missing. Players try to get rid of something in both games, but what they try to get rid of is very different.
敗者の手元に1枚カードが残って終わる。それを高野が同じだと例えた気持ちはよくわかるわ。でもね、だってジジ抜きは。
If the missing card was added back in, there would be no loser. Hanyu, the missing card in this world, where someone has to foist their sins onto another, has joined the game, so this game has no losers. Yet you're still trying to take one card away? What a waste of a miracle.
この世界にいらない。これがフルでリカが奇跡を求めた1000年の旅の最後にたどり着いた答えよ。
The answer has always been there. It was there in a way. It was there in the very first game of Mion's club. There was always a loser because we were playing a game of cards with one missing. If we could fill in that missing card by believing each other or helping each other, then it would complete a full deck of 52 cards. A complete world without a loser. A complete world where no one is left out. Nothing has to stay out of the circle. Nobody has to cry or be burdened with sins. A world where everyone holds each other's hands and forgives each other's sins. When people live, there will be sin. What's important isn't to avoid sin, but to forgive them. A world can only become ugly and twisted when people try to stay pure. Let us accept our sins. Let us all forgive. That's the answer Rika Furude reached. A complete world. A world free from the sins of the human world where one has to become a loser. Rika reached that as a human being. After an unbelievably long time, she finally reached it. I'll be right back. Give me just a second. Allergies are killing me tonight. The frozen time had begun to thaw. There was smoke coming from the muzzle of Takano's gun, so it was definitely fired. However, nobody got hit. Keiichi looked around fearfully to make sure nobody was bleeding. They were all fine. Nobody had been shot.
外しやがった。
邪魔はないね。
Tension lifted in Neon's body as she began to sweat all over.
この私がこの距離で
All the club members thought the same thing. It was a miracle that the bullet didn't hit anyone. The club members had all felt the same way. They were all thinking, if it's going to hit someone, let it be me. However, Rika Furude wished for a miracle that was far beyond that. Rika wished for a miracle that was higher than self-sacrifice. She wished for a world where the bullet wouldn't hit anyone. She wished for a world where Takano wouldn't be hurt because she shot someone. Footsteps were rushing towards them. Takano tried to run, but she tripped over a root and a scrapbook in her hand scattered everywhere. As she tried to gather up the papers, members of the Bloodhounds surrounded her. All the Bloodhounds pointed their guns her way. Some even poked her with them, but Takano still didn't stop gathering the papers. Some of the men stepped on the papers, and Takano tried to pull them from on top of them. She tried to pull them out, begging them in tears to not step on her precious papers.
Takano-san, あなたを逮捕します。
私が全部
The club members, feeling bad for her, looked at the ground.
両手を後ろに回せ。こら、抵抗するな。いや、いやよいや。おじいちゃんのスクラップ持ってくの。
Takano just wanted to pick up the pages of her scrapbook, but the Bloodhounds, thinking that she was resisting, pulled on her hair to try and make her stand up. Although this was her fate, it was too hard to watch her to be treated that way. And then a noble voice resounded among them.
Mate!
Radiating with divine light, a man appeared. They all knew this man very well, but they had never seen him look so determined.
調査部の富武2位だ。彼女は調査部が保護する。しかし、司令部から直ちに東京へ連行せよと命令を受けています。君たちは彼女を見て気づかないのか。彼女の全身を見ろ。かきむしった後でいっぱいじゃないか。ひなみ沢症候群のかなり高いレベルの発症が疑われる。
There were lots of horrible scars on her wrists, arms, and neck. Takano had scratched herself throughout the day because of all the stress. There was no way for anyone to be certain if those marks were symptoms of the syndrome. But when Tomitake said that, it certainly sounded true.
しかし、サンサは入江機関で予防薬の投与を受けているはずです。発症するわけがありません。君たちは資料をちゃんと読んでいるのか。予防薬は 100% の効果を保証するものではないと書いてあるぞ。十分読んでいれば彼女の状態が末期症状であるとわかるはずだ。
He really is.
調査部は彼女の尋問にあたり、ひなみ沢症候群の治療が最優先されると考える。そもそも今回の事件が彼女の意思に基づくものなのか、末期発症による妄想、錯乱によって引き起こされ、それを誰かが利用したのか。慎重な判断がなくては全容解明は不可能であると考える。彼女の罪なのか、彼女の病んだ病の罪なのか、この場で断言するのは不可能だ。それを判断するためにも彼女には治療を受ける権利があり、義務がある。
次郎さん、
彼女を直ちに入江機関本部へ移送し、発症レベルの検査に入る。高野三佐の治療体制を準備させるよう入江二佐に連絡を。ただし、
Yeah, like she's done really stupid shit, but I think she's very pitiable. She's not like, it's not like nothing in her life has ever been fair. Like you can't say that, like, my God, like it's like Okanogi said, she never once had an ally. Like Tomitake is literally the only ally she's ever truly had. The Bloodhounds conveyed all this information over the radio. Nobody had any objections. Their job was to arrest her, after all. Any interrogations or investigations after that were part of the investigations. So if those were the orders from the investigations, and that was that. Tomitake walked over to the muddy figure of Takano. Takano buried her face in Tomitake's chest and cried. Only Tomitake and Takano knew the meaning of those tears.
遅くなったね。君を迎えに来たよ。君がそうだと思っているような。
You're pretty bad, but not as bad as you think you are.
やり直そう。今度こそ君の本当の人生、田無美代子の人生をやり直すんだ。
できない。私、いっぱい罪にまみれた。やり直したりなんかしちゃいけない。死ななきゃいけない。じゃなきゃ私は自分の罪の重さで。
そうだね。君の罪はひょっとすると軽いものじゃないかもしれない。でも大丈夫。僕が一緒だから。だから一緒に償おう。高野美代の罪を償おう。そして僕と一緒に田無美代子を取り戻そう。その日まで僕は決して君のそばを離れない。
生きてていいの？私は生きてていいの？みんながお前が死ねば丸く収まるって私に言うよ。それでも私は生きてていいの。次郎さん、それでも私は許してもらえるの？
世界は君を許さないかもしれない。
Oh my god.
でもそれ僕が
Oh god. Oh. Okay.
だから生きよう。死ぬことは罪の償いにはならない。生きて償い、世界に許しを請おう。そしてやり直すんだ。そうしたらきっと思い出せる。
Good times here, folks. Nothing but good times.
君が本当はどんな人で、どんな風な笑顔を浮かべていたかをね。
After a while, Takano was taken to the EDA Institute in handcuffs. She was, however, handcuffed with her hands in front of her. She was holding the scrapbook Tomitake cleaned the mud off of it. The downpour from early in the afternoon had passed. The cicadas began singing again, reminding everything that this was a normal June in Hinamizawa. It was hot despite being June, and the sky was brilliantly clear. Someone asked someone else the time. She looked at her watch. It was 3 p.m. The Watanagashi festival would be starting at 5. It was almost time. Even from there, the Furude shrine could be seen. There were red lanterns hanging all over. Once the sun went down, those lanterns would be lit. It was almost time for the Watanagashi festival. And with that, Everything would end when the Higurashi cried. The game that stretched across different worlds had ended, and what the winner obtained after their victory is that the game ended without a loser. Hanyu was prepared to leave after the game was over, but she was still there. She was allowed to be there. In other words, she wasn't the card that was taken away. The card that was taken to play their game of Old Bachelor was no longer there. The breeze rustled Hanyu's sweaty, messed up hair. She was dumbfounded. Rika went over and stood next to her. She didn't need to say anything. She only smiled at Hanyu. The girl had pretended to be a bystander, but decided to step onto the stage. And then she thought that was enough and tried to step off of it. With those memories of her bright time on the stage, she tried to step off, but someone grabbed her sleeve and stopped her. She was told she could stay, and then she realized she was still on the stage and she didn't have to leave after all. There was a spot for her on the stage, and she was no longer a bystander, and that was an unbelievable miracle. She didn't even exist in the script. Nobody needed her to be there. The miracle had allowed her to stay.
その程度の奇跡じゃちょっと足りない気もしますですよ。みた十分ですよ。こんな奇跡僕の身には十分すぎて。
Rika smiled at Hanyu one more time and passed her what was in her right hand. Hanyu felt something cold and hard. What was it? Hanyu slowly opened her hand and looked at it. It was the bullet Takano had fired. It was proof of their miracle. It was the proof that Hanyu could exist there. It was the proof that they could be together forever and ever.
もうすぐ暗くなってお祭りの時間になりますです。みんなで楽しくお祭りで部活なのです。もう脇で見てることなんかできませんです。きっと新人いじめの洗礼で罰ゲーム三昧でかわいそなのです。もう綿流しのお祭り見てるだけじゃないのですね。そうです。だってお祭りは見るものじゃなくて加わるものですよ。
Were they testing the speakers? It was still bright outside, but the music was playing already. The cheap-dubbed BGM collection of festival music could be heard from the Furude shrine in the distance. It sounded so exciting to her. This was what she had wanted to join in on all this time. Rika held her hand. Let's go together. Let's go to the Watanagashi festival. All of us. Together. Yeah. They had almost too much energy left. It had been a long day and many things had happened, but they still had the energy to go to the festival. It was, after all, the special day of Watanagashi. The curse of Oyashiro-sama had been lifted and no tragedy would ever occur again. It was the first peaceful Watanagashi, the first without a tragedy since the dam conflict. The villagers had noticed that the phone lines were disconnected during the day, but it was fixed so quickly that they didn't pay much attention. They heard the Self-Defense Force helicopter near the mountains, but rumor had it that they came to the wrong place for their training. The elderly villagers laughed and said that the young men of the National Defense Force need to pay more attention. Some people say the Self-Defense Force even came to the EDA clinic. The villagers didn't even get suspicious of that. They assumed that the EDA clinic had started doing physical checkups for the SDF. There were pieces of broken glass on the roadside near the village border, as if there was an accident. Some people wondered how anyone could have had an accident when there was no obstruction in the road. The elderly people said to each other that they always had to drive carefully, even on a familiar road, but it looked only like a trace of a normal accident, so they didn't get suspicious. The rest was a ghost story. The villagers heard an extra firework to signal the festival's taking place. It wasn't an echo. The people in charge of the fireworks were puzzled. But when Rika said that Oyashiro-sama must have shot an extra firework, the villagers simply believed that was true. It was the night of Watanagashi, the biggest festival of the year. The villagers forgot their worries and enjoyed themselves. The club members were doing great as usual. They were doing so great, they were all taken in the main tent and yelled at by the villagers. That was a normal Watanagashi night for the villagers, but there was one thing that was very different. The girls fought for an unimaginably long time in many different worlds for the sake of this night. However, nobody would ever know that. Oh, there was another big change, too. Rika Furude said that she wants to go to a pool in the summer. It was unusual for her to say she wants to do something. She wants to see the stars. She wants to go on a camping trip. She wants to look at the sunflowers. She wants to make the school into a haunted house, etc. There are so many things she wants to do over the summer break. Oh, man. Right. Rika Furude, for the first time, is making plans for after June 1983. Because this is the first summer break she's going to experience after 100 years of repeating the same life, she will now experience an all-new summer vacation. Who wants to stop her from getting excited about that? Rika Furude is looking forward to waking up before Satoko to rip the page off the calendar at the end of June. Rika Furude's infinite future has begun. There are infinite possibilities, yet she can only make one choice. But that's why it's a great world. Let's talk for a moment about the people who fought with Rika Furude. Mion Sonozaki has vowed to study hard so she can continue her education after summer break. According to Keiichi, even that may not be enough time for her. However, how can the legendary club leader Mion Sonozaki fail an entrance exam? She will more than likely find a way to get into a school she wants to go to. Hopefully, it isn't an illegal one. Anyhow, she's looking forward to enjoying her final summer break, so she has tons of plans. The club members can't get away from Mion, even during the summer. Once you're involved with her, she'll always find a way to get at you. No matter how much you want to be alone, you'll never go back to spending a boring summer by yourself. Keiichi Maebara has been asked by Mion and Chie Sensei to be their next class president. He was also asked to be the next club leader too, but he declined immediately. Keiichi likes the club because Mion runs it. He continues saying that it's Mion's club until she got mad. Keiichi can't understand why she's so angry. Well, Keiichi wouldn't be Keiichi if he wasn't dense. Ain't it the truth? So things are rather lively around him today. His good name continues to spread even in Okinomiya. Rin Ryugu is growing more energetic every day too. And then she took everybody home. Satoko, Rika, and Hanyu spend every day in fear of being abducted by her. Still, she's been acting more mature lately. She takes care of her younger classmates, and she's almost like a mother figure to the class. She is like a mother to all the club members, too. After hearing that, Keiichi said that he'd be the father for the class. As usual, Rena thought about that too much and blushed. Satoko Hojo is as lively as ever. She used up most of her traps in the mountain during the battle with the mountain dog, so she's setting up new ones for the next event. Rumor has it that some of the members of the Bloodhounds were so impressed with her trap techniques, they asked her for some lessons. There's supposed to be a training area near Mount Fuji, and they asked her to set up traps there. That's not a very good idea. The Sea of Trees really will become a forest of no return. Either way, Satoko keeps saying how she wants to fight against the Bloodhounds next. She's invincible! Also, she's become a great cook. That's because Hanyu has been teaching her. According to Hanyu, Satoko is a very quick learner as compared to Rika. Satoko's dream is to master fried chicken, so when which is her brother's favorite, and welcome him home with it. Aww. I'm the only one who knows this, but her dream may come true very soon. As for her brother, Satoshi Hojo is yet to return home. His condition is unchanged. If there's any change, it's in Shion Sonozaki. She goes to the clinic on her days off. Nobody knows why she goes there, but she seems to be very happy, so nobody pays much attention to it. Mion teased Shion by saying that maybe she was planning on getting implants, but Shion just smiles. Also, for whatever reason, she's been visiting her relative's clothes shop and buying up all kinds of men's clothing. Lately, she even started buying more than just men's clothing, but why is she so excited when she visits the clinic with a maid outfit that's not in her size? The truth is shrouded in mystery. The biggest change is probably that Shion babies Satoko nowadays. She tries to make Satoko call her Nene, which annoys Satoko. Kyosuke Irie has two jobs now. On one hand, he's a respected doctor, and on the other, he's an evangelist for maids. The Irie clinic was supposed to be closed, but the villagers pleaded with the authorities to not shut it down. While Irie was originally from the village, he and everyone else While Irie isn't originally from the village, he and everyone else feels that he's one of the villagers now. He's an indispensable part of the village life. The conservative attitude towards Hinamizawa syndrome is gone, and now it is being researched very proactively. The syndrome is being researched so passionately that hopefully in the near future, all the victims of the disease will be freed for good. Yeah, like it's one of those two. Also later on, Irie will publish an advanced article about the influence of the brain on human behavior, which will surprise people in the medical world. I won't go into details here, but it'll talk about how one should hate the sins instead of the sinner. The deceased Hifumi Takano and Mio Takano's names will be mentioned in that article. Jiro Tomatake still visits Hinamizawa every season. He's still known as the fighting, traveling photographer, and he continues to walk around the village looking for good picture spots. However, he isn't seen in the village as much as before. His bicycle is always parked around the back of the clinic, so maybe he spends a lot of time there. Some villagers say maybe he's sick and being treated, but his bright smile proves they're wrong. Mio Takano hasn't been seen since that day. Nobody knows where she's gone, but obviously Tomitake isn't worried, so she must be doing fine. She'll probably show up one day out of nowhere and start telling ghost stories to scare some kids. As for Momoro Akasaka, what happened to him was pretty funny. His wife and daughter followed him in secret. They pretended to run into him at the festival. Rika called him Papa, so things grew complicated all of a sudden. Akasaka's wife smiled, but she choked his neck when they... oh my god. Her arms were folded, but the braid moved like a tail. Squeeze. She tortured a man who destroyed a special forces unit without even using a weapon. Rika continued to tease him, making the situation even worse. However, Akasaka's family liked Hinamizawa, so they said that they wanted to come back. Akasaka's daughter and Rika grew so close that they seemed like sisters. Kurado Oishi has gotten back into playing mahjong. For whatever reason, Akane Sonozaki has joined his table too, and there are rumors that a riot squad almost got dispatched to the mahjong parlor one time. His colleagues say Oishi has calmed down quite a bit. It's probably because he reached closure within himself, but his colleagues know nothing about that. He's planning to move to Hokkaido when he retires, and he wants to come back every summer. His bright second life is waiting for him. Tatsuyoshi Kasai hasn't changed much compared to the others. To some people, this was a life-changing event, but for Kasai, it was just another episode added to his tales of heroics. According to Kasai, the incident was just a little bigger than usual. If this was just a little unusual, then what in the world would be needed to impress him? Shion insists that he will tell her, but Kasai only tells us that it's a secret. Also, he regretted exposing that part of his past. Shion keeps begging him to tell her about it, but he simply ignores her. Let me talk about myself, too. I, Hanyu, am doing great in my new life as Hanyu Furude. I'm finally getting better at playing games, and now I'm taking the role of the club's dark horse, a position formerly reserved for Keiichi Maibara. I had a bad habit of believing everything I hear, so Mion and the others always tell me some strange things. Thanks to that, I'm getting tougher, to put it in a good way. Shrewd, to put it in a bad one. But then, I need to, otherwise I wouldn't survive in this club. I'm going to continue to learn a lot of stuff through these club activities so I can live in the human world. Sunday, June 19th, 1983. Night falls on my longest day in the past 1,000 years. The club members are having a blast. A lot of people are here. The stall vendors are still doing business. The speakers are blaring rough yet exciting festival music. I've known all of these, but how wonderful it is to actually feel and hear them in person. I thought I knew because I've been following and watching them, but that was completely different. I knew of it, but this is the first time I've actually experienced it. We had a takoyaki eating contest. There was no octopus in it, but it was still very tasty. We had a shaved ice eating contest. I would have enjoyed the shaved ice if I had eaten it more slowly. I bought a candied apple for the first time. Everyone took a bite from it. It was tasty, and it was fun. We played a shooting game. I didn't know how difficult it would be to shoot a target, but it was fun too. Also, we played a shady lottery game. It was one of those things where you pulled a string and got a prize. Nobody got a good prize. We all complained about it to the vendor. That too was so much fun. Then it was time for the dedication dance. Of course we got there early, so we commandeered the best seats. I snuck out and stood where I was told to. I could see better than the other club members. This was the spot where the object of worship sat. This was where I was supposed to be during the ritual dance. No, this was where I thought I had to be. But seeing the dance from that spot wasn't fun. Therefore, I returned to where I was, and I sat with everyone else. They saved me a spot. Everyone rubbed my head while asking me where I went. I apologized by saying, "Hello." That made me very happy. I watched the performance and the crowd of people. It was the best dance I've witnessed in the past 1,000 years. I couldn't keep either my happiness or my tears from flowing out. After the dance was over, a handful of cotton was passed around to all the villagers. We let the cotton absorb all the filth and sins of the past year and washed it down the stream. Cotton is cotton. Obviously, it's not human. We use cotton instead of human so that nobody is sad. In other words, this was the way to purify sins without making anyone suffer.
はい、これ羽生ちゃんの綿だよ。やり方はわかる？わかりますのです。こうしてポンポンしてから流すのですよ。はんはん。
The girl who gave me the cotton took the letter I from her name during the last year's Watanagashi and washed it down the stream. By doing so, she was freed from her suffering and began a new life. We drifted our sins down the stream. It's not the same as pushing our sins onto the cotton. Instead, we wash away our own sins and forgive ourselves. We forgive each other, we help each other, and that's how we create our own story. I put my cotton into the stream gently. The cotton went down the stream, into the world where sins are cleansed. I let my bare feet soak in the clear stream as I watched the long, long line of cotton flowing down the stream in the dark, surrounded by people sending their cotton flowing down the wondrous stream. This is a complete world where all the fragments were put together. This is an ideal world. What else is there? What else do you need? Hanyu Furude, still once more. Because we can be even happier than this. We can be happier if we wish to be. Not a long time from now, but in the near future. Then when is it? I told you, it's in the near future. We will be happy then, too. See? Everyone is entitled to happiness. The difficult part is accepting that. Everyone is entitled to happiness. The difficult part is fulfilling that. I too am entitled to happiness. The difficult part is working out a compromise, because from now on, I'm going to live a much, much happier life. I'm not going to compromise with just this. We will achieve the happiness that we've missed. 100 years worth for me, 1,000 years worth for you. That's a lot. I'm not going to try to read this. It's going to go way too fast. Yeah, like this stuff, like I just go back and watch the video later and pause it to read it. Like those, they go a little fast. Yeah, yeah. Can you believe we did it, everybody? We did it. Go us! For us, the spectacular ones. You finished another artwork. Nice. Yo, nice. That's fucking sick. Woo. Oh, is it done? Is it over? What's happening? Okay, it's fading out. Okay. What do we got? What do we got? The scenario jump mode has been unlocked. I think we got a staff room too. Tips in the reading room have been unlocked. The staff room has been unlocked. There's a couple of more things we gotta do. The forbidden treasure, Onigiri no Ryo. Ryo. Alright, there's a couple things we gotta get to. I'm gonna give everybody a couple minutes to get up and stretch out a little bit. We got a tip, we've got the staff room, and we've got one other thing. There's one other thing that we've gotta do after that, and then we will close out. So I'm gonna get up, stretch out for a couple minutes. I advise everybody else to do the same. We probably got, I don't know, 10, 20 more minutes left, and then we will call it. And I'll grab that latest artwork and throw it on screen in the meantime. So get up, stretch out. There's just a little bit more. The journey's over, but there's just a couple of more things that need touched on. That's it. Alright, I'll give everybody another couple minutes or so to get on back. And then we will go through the final tip, the staff room, and one final word. Okay! Alright. Are we good? Are we good to, Are we good to go ahead and have a look at this last tip and the staff room? We'll go to tips first. The Forbidden Treasure, Onigiri no Ryuo. The Forbidden Treasure, Onigiri no Ryuo. This is the most valuable asset of the Furude Shrine that's kept in the ritual storehouse. In ancient times, when this place was a chaotic world of both humans and demons, this precious sword defeated the demon god. However, nobody has seen it for 1,000 years. According to the legend, it is sealed in a statue dedicated to Oyashiro-sama in the ritual storehouse. Because of its structure, as long as the belief in Oyashiro-sama continues, it will remain a forbidden tool, forever sealed away. Also, it is only mentioned in the forbidden scrolls of the Furude Shrine. Therefore, only a handful of the Furude family heads have ever known about its existence. According to several of those forbidden scrolls, the sword is shaped like a willow branch. There are some ink paintings on the sword, made by a few Furude heads, but none of them match that description. That means they drew those pictures from their imagination. The legend says that there was a girl named Oka who received the divine message that commanded her to defeat the demon god. However, neither the sword of the humans or demons could conquer the demon god. It would require a blade that was neither a human sword nor a demon sword. Only a sword that mixes human and demon qualities could defeat the demon god. It is said repeatedly that the ancestors of Hinamizawa are half demon and half human. Oka Furude, dates unknown, is said to be the first person whose blood was mixed in that way. This description conveys that. Heaven gave Oka a precious sword. The precious sword was shaped like a willow branch. Its tip split 3 ways, which symbolized heaven, earth, and people in unity. It also symbolizes the harmony between heaven, demons, and humans. Oka headed to the swamp where the demon god hid and defeated him with this treasured sword. Each forbidden scroll describes how she defeated the demon god differently. Some say she disciplined him, some say he ran away, some say he surrendered. What happened to the demon god afterwards is unclear too. The oldest scroll says the precious sword destroyed the demon god's horn, but other books don't mention that. The precious sword that defeated the demon god was then enshrined. It was named Onigiri no Ryuo. Oka sealed his precious sword in the deepest place of the shrine to hide its existence forever. Even if it was created to slay the demon god, the sword didn't belong in this world anymore and shouldn't exist on the face of the earth. Some said that this was why it was removed from the human world. But some said Oka was the daughter of the demon god and that she wanted to banish the sword that killed her mother. The ancient cult of Oyashiro-sama suggests Oyashiro-sama was this demon god. The source of chaos, the source of all that was evil, and the source of all friction, to prevent the demon god from returning to the human world through worship and comfort. To prevent the demon god from returning to the world through worship and comfort is the root of that ancient cult. This may be a type of cult devoted to an evil god. This idea is not worshipped for protection, but to stave off a curse linked slightly to the modern worship of Oyashiro-sama, but seems slightly distant from the modern worship that asks for Oyashiro-sama's blessings and sees them as a god of marriage and good relationships. It fosters the argument that humans are good by nature, saying that all discord is the work of Oyashiro-sama and there are no demons in the world of man. After that, the legend continues on to what we know today, the harmony of humans and demons. But in this era, all the scrolls of the origin of the beliefs of Oyashiro-sama and the scrolls of the matriarch of the Furude family have been sealed due to being forbidden. That happened probably because of the new image of Oyashiro-sama, that of a loving and affectionate god, and the ancient image of Oyashiro-sama, the source of all evil, didn't match. It became too difficult to explain the fate's doctrine. Also, if one believes the Forbidden Scrolls, the Furude family was descended from one who killed her own mother. This would mean their blood was cursed. If all of that is true, then today's faith is very different from the one that was started by the matriarch. One of the leaders of the Furude family from hundreds of years ago wrote this. The Onigiri no Ryuo, the legendary precious sword, is the symbol of both the Furude family and the sins of the human world. It was an era where people pushed the source of their evil onto others and could only purify their sins by killing one another. The matriarch took the root of all evil herself and let her child murder her. This was how the place was freed from the chaos. The matriarch usually means Okafurude, but sometimes means her mother. This notion is that the matriarch was a demon god was taboo among the Furude family. However, obviously some leaders interpret it that way. When the Furude family, or when the world of man, commits the foolish act of seeking to blame others and tries to return to the world of demons, that is when the faith will disappear and the statue's head will shatter. That's when the Onigiri no Ryuo will reappear to us. The second coming will once again revive the memory of the Furude family's forgotten sins. Is the demon god a fictional legend, or someone who actually existed? In some rare cases, babies were born with horns and were called the children of a demon god, descendants of the Furude family. Who will read this? The myths passed down by our forbidden scrolls are numerous, and their context vastly differs. But don't get caught up in the smoke. No matter how different all of these scrolls are, there is one thing they all want to convey. Search the heart of Okafurude, the one who sealed the Onigiri no Ryuo forever. That is the fate that all the Furude family leaders must understand.
I think that's pretty simple in what they're trying to explain there.
Alright. And now let's go see what our friend Ryukishi has to say to us on this, the completion of the final chapter. Oh, what the hell? What happened? Did it screw up? Did reading the tip break the save file? Are you kidding me? Reading the tip broke the save. It broke the global save file. Okay, I can fix this. Don't worry. So I had to prepare this anyway. So we're going to go ahead and close this. There's something that I had to get our pal Nert to handle for me, and that was the creation, or rather borrowing, his save file. Because there's something that you unlock the ability to do once you complete the game and see the ending. There's something you can do there. You go back to the fragments portion of the game, and you have to reassemble the fragments in perfect chronological order without making a mistake. And when you do that, you get something else to happen. And we'll see that after I go and fix this save file problem. So we're going to paste Nert's file over mine, reload the video game. There we go. So now we're going to go check out the staff room. Hello, this is Ryukishi7. Thank you for playing Matsuribayashi. No, thank you very much for playing Higurashi When They Cry until the end. Matsuribayashi is, in a way, the solution episode for the situation with Takano and the kids starting in the from halfway through Minagoroshi. How can they defeat Takano's conspiracy? How can they reach their ideal ending? I wrote this episode as a duel between you, the reader, and me, the writer. So if you think you created the better solution world than my Matsuribayashi, then that means you've defeated Ryukishi7 in this duel. I, Ryukishi7, have provided 2 resolutions. One is for how to fight against Takano. First, there is a hint from the Minagoroshi chapter. You find out about Takano's conspiracy, which relies on Emergency Manual 34. Next, here are hints from Watanagashi and Mayakashi chapters. It has been 48 hours after Rika's death, yet the village is peaceful. If you put those 2 things together, obviously the basis of the emergency manual, which Hifumi Takano wrote, that everyone will develop terminal symptoms within 48 hours, isn't true. When you put those 2 together, you can realize that if Rika's body was discovered 48 hours after her death, then it's possible to prevent the final operation. In the Matsuribayashi chapter, I wrote about an attacking side and a defending side like a novel. If I were to simply write about the resolution, all I had to write was an oishi to announce that Rika died at least 48 hours ago, and Takano's conspiracy would fall apart once the news reached Tokyo. This was rather an This was rather an easy solution, like a puzzle, so I'm sure many of you got this right. The other resolution was the ideal ending for this world. To answer this, I have to explain the worldview of this story first. There are hints all over, but the crucial ones that are the Tataragaroshi and Minagoroshi chapters. Satoko's uncle comes home and Satoko's life becomes miserable. How can she be rescued from that situation? If this story was an exercise in murder, then the Tataragaroshi chapter is the correct answer. Keishi kills Teppei and hides the body and hides his body well. There's a happy ending. But I didn't end the episode that way. Instead, I denied it with a bad ending. The resolution of the worldview in Higurashi When They Cry advocates is a non-violent one, with everybody united together. This is established in the question chapters such as Onikakushi, Watanagashi, and Tataragaroshi. In those worlds, when someone becomes suspicious about everything and worries about it alone, things get worse and that leads to a tragedy. The Mayakashi chapter is the sublimation of that situation. On the other hand, when one talks to their friends, it's revealed that the causes of the tragedies are quite silly. That is indicated in the Sumihoroboshi and Minagoroshi episodes. In both worlds, you can see in the worlds of Higurashi, anything can be overcome when people talk to each other and help one another. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen in reality. Helping each other creates friction, and oftentimes working alone is a lot simpler. However, we always hope that we can connect with other people and understand each other so that we can face any difficulty. In that sense, this world is a fantasy. That's right. In the world of Higurashi, there is one magical rule. That is to talk to others and accept help from them. Then you can defeat anything. With that, it's possible to make a miracle happen. If that could be cast into an absolute rule, it would be a sort of magical, systematic miracle. Just like what Hanyu and her friends said in the story, that is the worldview of Higurashi When They Cry. If you follow that rule and think about an ideal ending, I bet the first thing you'll think about is an ending where all the club members unite and defeat Takano. Actually, there are scenes in Matsuribayashi chapter that affirm that sort of ending. However, at the same time, Takano is described as a very lonely person. By doing so, I raise a question about the resolution. Everyone else unites, defeats Takano, and makes her into the sacrifice. This is a happy ending for everyone except Takano. It is a very popular style of story for the protagonist to unite together and sacrifice the antagonist. Aliens came to Earth to invade us, so the world unites and defeats the aliens. Hey, we had aliens too, it's okay. Hooray for humans! We must all get along. This is a very popular storyline all over the world. There are plenty of stories that use aliens, devils, or monsters as clear bad guys and make them into sacrifices. Two parties fighting for each other become allies once the third party shows up. Storylines like these are indeed exciting. By adding a sacrifice, differing parties unite and become allies. To create this situation, there has to be always the third party, the sacrifice, as well. I'm sure many of those who created such stories must have already noticed that. We always add a third enemy that can't possibly unite with us. To make up with each other, we try to find a common enemy. Am I the only one who feels that describes our world today? In reality, this world belongs only to humans. There are no aliens or devils or monsters. So for us to find an enemy, we'll have to fight each other forever. To make up with each other, we need a new enemy. So we just end up fighting someone else. In this chapter of Higurashi, I declared that to be the demon of the world of man. With these explanations of the worldview here in mind, do you wonder if the resolution of defeating Takano is in fact an ideal resolution of the Matsuribayashi chapter? That's right, it's basically the same foolishness found in Tataragaroshi. According to that logic, the Minagoroshi chapter isn't the best resolution for the problems that surround Satoko either. Do you understand that? How can they make up with Takano? You wouldn't suggest to make Tokyo into a new enemy and then let the club members join with Takano, would you? If I continue to talk about this issue, I'll probably end up mentioning something religious, so let me stop here. What kind of ending would be the best outcome following the worldview of Higurashi When They Cry? Perhaps it's something better than the Matsuribayashi chapter. You can consider this a graduating question for Higurashi When They Cry. Maybe I'll leave it as my final gift to those who enjoyed this tale for 4.5 years. Thank you for reading this extremely complicated story. In the end, what was it all for? If I were to put the answer to that question in one word, it would be entertainment. It's not important if you were able to answer the riddles. After all, if you enjoyed yourself, you won. Ryukishi 7 will continue to challenge you. Higurashi When They Cry ends here, but I hope I get to see you again in a different world. What kind of work do I want to create next? Maybe it's fitting to choose my next work from an infinite number of possibilities while listening to the chorus of the Higurashi. I want to express my gratitude to all the people who have supported me until today. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Ryukishi 7. And so, like I said, when we finish the game and we go back and we put all the pieces together in the fragments chapter, we put them in perfect chronological order without making a single mistake, we unlock something else. And I will again thank our good friend Nert for tossing me his save file so that I didn't have to do that on stream. So what happens is we unlock this fragment here. Flags from Kids' Meals. She needs to be rescued too. A girl's cheerful voice echoed in the house. It was a tenement house, so the walls were thin. So of course her yell carried through to the neighbors. But since it was a child's voice, nobody complained.
お父さんたちデパートへ行こうと思うんだが。
Her father's voice didn't reach the girl because all she was thinking about was making a new secret base with her friends in the field. Her father knew the girl had been looking forward to going to the mall and that if they went without her, she would be upset. He also knew that the girl liked collecting flags from the kid meals at the restaurant there, and one more would bring her a collection to 20 flags. The girl was making a wish on those flags. She believed that if she collected 20 of them, she could become happy. Oh well. He supposed he'd bring a flag home as a souvenir. It wouldn't be a big deal. If she asked the waitress, she'd bring one for him. On that day, due to an accident, the trains were running behind schedule. To make up for time lost, drivers were braking a little too late and accelerating a bit too soon. It was rather unsafe. The Tanashi family didn't own a car. They always used a train to go to the mall. As the girl skipped her way to her friend's house, an unfamiliar woman stopped her. Hello? Obviously, she wasn't from around here. The ties between the neighbors were very tight around there. The girl knew everyone's face, so if there was a stranger, it was either a new mailman or someone who was lost. The woman said to the girl,
行きたい? 死にたい?
Any person would think the woman was crazy asking something like that, but the girl was too innocent to think that way. She answered immediately.
行きたい.
そう。ならお行きなさい。どうせ行っても友達は留守だけど、それでもお行きなさい。
留守なの?
The girl couldn't figure out why this woman would know that. As the woman left, the girl stopped her. She was curious, although it was a little scary as to what response she'd get if she answered differently.
なら、死にたいだとどうなるの?
お子様ランチの旗がもう一本手に入るわ。
ずるい! 私に内緒でデパートに行く気だ! ずるいずるい!
The girl turned and tried to run back
いいの
home.
ね。後悔はしないのね。
The mysterious woman tried to confirm this.
なんで後悔するの?
教えないわ。意地悪だから。
The girl thought that this was some kind of a riddle, so she pondered it for a while, but she couldn't figure it out. Then she clapped her hands as if she came to a conclusion.
大丈夫だよ、お姉ちゃん。
どうして大丈夫なの?
な 何があってもお父さんとお母さんが一緒だもん。
The woman stepped aside. The girl bowed to her and ran home. She saw her parents locking the door to leave. The girl jumped on them and nagged them that she wanted to go too. The girl was going to the mall with her family. The family headed to the train station, waited for a train to arrive, and got on it. The driver was feeling the pressure to make up for the delay, and the passenger could tell that from the way he was driving. The girl noticed the unusual swaying of the train. She stood on her knees and looked out the window. Her mother told her to sit down because it was dangerous. The girl stuck her tongue out. Then, the train reached a very big and very sharp curve. The train tilted in that direction, and all the people were shoved to the side. They were all squished together and grumbled about it. Then the train continued to... The girl and her parents came home under a sky full of stars with shopping bags in their hands. They unlocked the door, turned the lights on, and then the girl put the bags on the front door and ran into her room. She opened her desk drawer and took something out of her pocket and put it in. She closed the drawer once, but opened it again and then spread her treasure on the tatami floor. There were flags of many different countries that came from the kids' meals. The Japanese flag, the American flag, the English flag. Which country was this for? The one with 3 colors. She lined them up as she counted. She counted out loud, and then she danced around happily, for now she had 20 of them. It took her so long to collect that many. It was hard work for this girl, who was so proud of herself for reaching her goal. She worked so hard that there must be something good waiting for her. She made a wish to become happy if she collected 20 of them. Therefore, something wonderful must be waiting to happen. The girl waited excitedly, but soon realized it wasn't a magic lamp, so no genie would be jumping out. Maybe it wouldn't happen that night. Maybe it'd be tomorrow. The girl decided to wait patiently. She accomplished something as great as collecting 20 flags. Surely some wonderful happiness awaited. Surely some wonderful miracle awaited. Or perhaps it might be just like a charm, keeping sad misfortunes at bay. The girl put her 20 flags back in the drawer. As she heard her mother tell her to brush her teeth and go to bed, she ran to the bathroom. This is fine, isn't it? It's okay to get a miracle in advance. What should I do next? There are plenty of fragments to play with. What? You want to try too? It's fun. It makes you feel like God. A world with Satoshi, or a world with the Sonozaki sisters didn't switch? I wonder what a world with Satoko's parents and Rika's parents alive and well would be like. Oh, how about this? Akasaka gets enticed to the enemy's side by Takano. That sounds interesting. Personally, I'm curious about the world where Takano is madly in love with Tomitake. It'll be fun to match Keiichi with different girls, too. I love drama very, very much. Let's see, what should I do next? I have so many fragments! Hey, do you want some? What kind of world are you going to make? So get to writing your fanfics, everybody. They're all valid fragments. A timeline where Ryukishi meets the first 6 Ryukishis. Well, everybody, that is the end of our Higurashi journey. Where we go from here, nobody knows. The future is one gigantic question mark. But I thank you all for taking this ride with me through a story that has been a hugely important part of my life since I first experienced it in 2006. I'm glad to have been able to share it with loads of new people that already enjoy it, people that have stopped by. Like we became good friends with my good pal Nert over the course of all this. Just a lot of good things happened over the course of all this, and I can't thank you enough for all kind of taking the time to take the journey with me. I hope that you've found it as fulfilling as I have as well.